Chapter 438. As soon as Lu Ping emerged from the Heaven's Spirit Hall's teleportation formation, he heard a deafening tiger roar. A loud laugh could be heard. Sire's cultivation is indeed profound. We'll consider this battle a draw, so why don't we call it a draw? Haha, Sire's cultivation is admirable. Today's battle was truly satisfying. If we continued, then both of us would be heavily injured. Calling it a draw is exactly what I wanted. Lu Ping was stunned. It seemed that he had arrived too late. The disciples of the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea and the disciples of Jinling had probably already begun. However, the person who spoke first made Lu Ping feel rather surprised. From the voice, it was clear that Yao Yong had just fought with someone. However, with Yao Yong's personality, he would either win or lose in a battle. There would always be a result. For him to call it a draw like today was truly inconceivable to Lu Ping. Lu Ping's interest was piqued. He walked towards the direction of the voice, wanting to see just who it was that could make Yao Yong feel a sense of familiarity. However, before Lu Ping had even arrived, Yao Yong's roar could be heard. Perfect. I have a few jars of fine wine in my dwelling. Sire, you've come from afar. Why don't we drink to our heart's content and see who's better at drinking? How delightful. I didn't think that I would meet such a straightforward person like Sire today, haha. Before Lu Ping had even arrived at the plaza of the Heaven's Spirit Hall, 2 streaks of red light had already streaked across the sky. Clearly, the 2 people who had just battled had already left. At that moment, a person came walking over. Seeing Lu Ping, he was stunned for a moment before revealing a smile. Lu Ping asked first, Junior Zhang, are the disciples of our sect currently sparring with the disciples of the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea? Why are you leaving? Zhang Ziqing smiled. So it's Senior Lu who has returned. Senior Lu has come at just the right time. Our early core forging disciples have just finished sparring with the disciples of the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea. Now it's time for the mid-core forging disciples to fight. With Senior Lu here, we should be able to win the first battle. Oh, they've already finished 5 battles? Who won? The disciples of the East Sea and the North Sea had a total of 10 matches. 5 matches were at the early stage of the core forging realm, and the other 5 matches were at the mid-stage. Zhang Ziqing said with both excitement and regret, 2 wins and 2 losses. Just now, Senior Brother Yao Yong shook hands with a disciple of Sky-Splitting Sword Sect and made up with him. Now, both of them are having a drinking competition. This result is better than Xianling sects. I heard that Xianling sect only won 2 out of the 5 early core forging matches and only won 1 round against Ouyang Weijian in the mid-core forging matches. Now that Senior Martial Brother Lu is here, I'm sure Xianling sect will be able to win another round in the mid-core forging matches. With this, Xianling sect is already half a round ahead of Xianling sect. Lu Ping smiled and said, the disciples of the East Sea sects are all crouching tigers and hidden dragons. How can I say that I will definitely win? Zhang Ziqing did not refute. Instead, he said, Senior Brother, Junior Brother was confident in that match. However, Senior Brother said that the disciples of the Eastern Sea sects are all crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Senior Brother did not believe it before, but now I have no choice but to believe it. Oh? This piqued Lu Ping's interest. Although his understanding of the Eastern Sea was far greater than his peers, Zhang Ziqing often worked under Heaven's Spirit Hall's Enlightened Master Profound Miao and Enlightened Master Guoxianshan. Presumably, Lu Ping would be able to obtain a lot of information from them. So, he asked, Junior Martial Brother, did you hear anything? Zhang Ziqing said, this time, although the disciples sent by the Eastern Sea sects are all elites, according to Martial Uncle Guoxianshan, these disciples are not the best of the best. Whether it is Senior Martial Brother Ji, Senior Martial Brother Yin, or Senior Martial Brother Yao Yong, they can be said to be the best of the early core forging disciples. Lu Ping nodded. What Zhang Ziqing said was true. The Eastern Sea sects were indeed stronger than the Northern Sea sections. So, he asked again, did Junior Martial Brother Xian Xian and Junior Martial Brother Xian Chu also compete with the Eastern Sea's disciples? Zhang Ziqing smiled and said, yes, if it weren't for the 2 of them, I'm afraid it wouldn't have been easy for us to win. These 2 Senior Martial Brothers won 1 match each, Senior Marshal Brother Yao drew one and lost the remaining 2 matches. Zhang Ziqing looked at Lu Ping and said, "In one match, Yuan Zhan went up. This person's cultivation has already reached the 3rd layer of core forging. He exchanged several dozen moves with a purple talisman pavilion disciple, but in the end, he was defeated." Lu Ping nodded and didn't say anything. Zhang Ziqing saw that Lu Ping's expression didn't change because of his mention of Yuan Zhan, so he thought for a moment and said, "Originally, Senior Marshal Brother Du Feng wanted to go up, but Yuan Zhan took the initiative. Marshal Uncle Xian Shu also selected his general. If Senior Marshal Brother Du had gone up, maybe we could have won another match." Lu Ping understood what Zhang Ziqing meant, so he smiled and said, "It's good to hide a bit. The 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea are stronger than us. If we make their disciples suffer, it'll be a bad thing for our sect. After all, the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea are several times stronger than the 10 great sects of the Northern Sea." Zhang Ziqing nodded and thought about it. Lu Ping smiled and said, "Why isn't Junior Marshal Brother continuing to observe? Are you going to leave?" Zhang Ziqing smiled and said, "There's nothing for me to do now, but there's still the matter of the courtyard. Marshal Uncle Xian Yuan pushed all the matters of the courtyard to me, but now he's free and unfettered." Lu Ping patted Zhang Ziqing's shoulder. After the two said their goodbyes, Lu Ping continued to walk towards the square in front of the main hall. In the distance, he saw several core forging late-stage cultivators sitting in front of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Among them, Taoist Gua Xianshan was chatting with a cultivator with an arrogant expression. Lu Ping recognized this person's robe. He was from the Eastern Sea's Crystal Palace. Next to them were 2 core forging late-stage cultivators from Jinling and 4 other core forging late-stage cultivators from the other 4 sects of the Eastern Sea. From time to time, their eyes would glance at the 2 cultivators sparring in the middle of the square. One of the 2 cultivators from Jinling was Taoist Liang Xianfeng, while the other one Lu Ping didn't know. Presumably, he was Taoist Xianshu who schemed against Huangli Island. Among these people, there was also a person Lu Ping was familiar with. It was Taoist Qin from the Northern Alliance when Jinling participated in the Northern Alliance's pill gathering in the Eastern Sea. Seeing that Taoist Qin was there, Lu Ping subconsciously didn't want him to find out that he was from the Northern Sea or even Jinling's disciple. So he quietly stood in an inconspicuous corner and watched the 2 sides fight. At this time, the Eastern Sea cultivator fighting was a disciple from Wind and Thunder Island, while the one fighting Jinling was Lu Ping's acquaintance, Taoist Xianlei. Taoist Xianlei learned a powerful thunder attribute magic art. Wind and Thunder Island was famous for their wind attribute and thunder attribute cultivation methods in the Eastern Sea. Naturally, it was a fierce battle when the 2 met. However, in the end, the cultivator from Wind and Thunder Island had the upper hand. Taoist Xuanlei's spiritual essence was not as strong as that of the cultivator from Wind and Thunder Island, so Taoist Xianlei was defeated in the end. From the side, Lu Ping could clearly see that enlightened Master Xianlei's fighting experience wasn't any less than the Wind and Thunder Island cultivators. In fact, he was even braver than the Wind and Thunder Island cultivator. Both of them cultivated lightning elemental spells, and they had been competing against each other with many basic spells. The lightning elemental spells they cast were the same, but the Wind and Thunder Island cultivator had a slight advantage in these spells. More often than not, his spells were stronger than enlightened Master Xianlei's. In addition to the fact that the cultivator from Wind and Thunder Island had a stronger foundation than Taoist Xianlei, the most likely reason for this phenomenon was that when Taoist Xianlei advanced to the mid-stage core forging realm, he smelted far less spirit items than the cultivator from Wind and Thunder Island. Lu Ping had a lot of contact with Taoist Xianlei on Frost Island. He knew that when Taoist Xianlei advanced to the mid-stage core forging realm, his accumulation was enough for him to smelt low-grade Earth-step Thunder Attribute spirit items. However, Thunder Attribute spirit items were rare, so Taoist Xianlei couldn't advance to the mid-stage core forging realm for a long time. In the end, Taoist Xianlei had no choice but to smelt 2 high-grade mystic spirit items. Although it was much stronger than the cultivator who smelted 1 spirit item, it was still not comparable to smelting low-grade Earth-step spirit items. This had always been a regret in Taoist Xuanlei's heart. Now, this regret finally had the opposite effect. The Northern Sea was barren. Taoist Xinlei wasn't inferior to the disciples of the Eastern Sea in all aspects. However, ordinary elite disciples of Wind and Thunder Island could smelt low-grade earth-step spirit items when they advanced to the mid-stage core forging realm. As the most elite disciple of Jinling, Taoist Xinlei couldn't obtain a low-grade earth-step spirit item. In Jinling, a cultivator who smelted a high-grade mystic spirit item when he advanced to the mid-stage core forging realm could become an elite cultivator and have the possibility of becoming a Dharma adept in the future, although the possibility was extremely small. In the Eastern Sea, the requirement was to reach the low-grade earth-step spirit item. Only then could a cultivator be recognized by the sect and be nurtured as a Dharma adept. The scarcity of spirit items in the Northern Sea was evident. This was also why the Northern Sea cultivators could win more in the early-stage core forging realm. When they reached the mid-stage core forging realm and smelted spirit items, the gap between the Northern Sea and Eastern Sea cultivators widened. The most obvious example was when Xianling sect's early-stage core forging realm cultivators could win 2 matches against Eastern Sea cultivators of the same level. When they reached the mid-stage core forging realm, they could only rely on Xianling sect's number 1 genius, Ouyang Weijian, to win 1 match. The second person to fight was Daoist Xuanqing of Zhenling. The Eastern Sea sent out a disciple from the Northern Alliance. Unfortunately, Daoist Xuanqing's strength was not as strong as Daoist Xuanlei's, but this Northern Alliance disciple was stronger than the Wind and Thunder Island cultivator. Daoist Xuanqing was defeated in a hurry. The third person to fight was Zhenling's disciple. Lu Ping didn't know him, but he heard his name was Xian Xiao. He was at core forging realm level 5, but unfortunately, he was still defeated by a disciple from the Violet Talisman Pavilion. In the mid-stage core forging realm, Jinling had lost 3 matches in a row. At this time, the surrounding cultivators of Jinling started whispering to each other. The competition between Jinling and Xianling sect had been getting more and more intense in recent years. The two sects would compete in everything. In the previous few battles between the two sects, Jinling always had the upper hand. This time, Jinling only needed to win 1 more match to suppress Xianling sect. However, in the mid-stage core forging realm, Jinling had lost 3 matches in a row. There were only 2 matches left, and the strongest disciple from the Crystal Palace had yet to fight. If all the mid-stage core forging realm cultivators were defeated, Jinling would become a laughingstock in front of Xianling sect. Who's the next match? He won't lose again, right? I heard it's Reverend Xian Shang. He's ranked in the top 10 among the new talents of North Sea. He should be able to win 1 match. It's hard to say. Reverend Xian Lei might not be much weaker than Reverend Xian Shang, and his opponent is Skyrend, known as the strongest sect in the ocean. Reverend Xian Shang will probably lose this match. As expected, the 5 great sects of East Sea are not something we can compare to. In North Sea, all of the cultivators from our sect who are fighting today are famous, but none of them can win against cultivators of the same level as them. North Sea can't compare to East Sea. No wonder some senior cultivators often say that our North Sea is barren. There's still one person from our sect who hasn't fought yet. That's right. Where's Reverend Lu Xinping, the Water Sword Immortal? Back then, during the chaotic battle at Tianling Mountain, Spiritual Master Lu Xinping suppressed several cultivators of the same level from our sect. What kind of prestige was that? If he was here, he would definitely be able to defeat Dong Hai and not let that Ouyang Weijian dominate. I heard that Reverend Lu Xinping went to Universe Island with Fornax Laozu. He probably hasn't returned yet. He probably won't be able to make it to this grand event. It's a pity. Why did he have to come at this critical moment? Perhaps our sect has other considerations. Think about it. If all the cultivators in the middle stage of the core forging realm in our sect lose, we can still say that our strongest cultivator did not participate in the battle due to other matters. At that time, we can still save some face, but if Reverend Lu Xinping is here today, once he loses, it will mean that our sect can't compare to Xinling sect, and Lu Xinping can't compare to Ouyang Weijian. Forget it. Our sect has always been open and above board. We're not afraid of being laughed at by others. If we win, we win. If we lose, we lose. Why would we use these dirty tricks? It'll just make others laugh at us. The Water Crystal Palace cultivator who was watching the battle with Reverend Guo Xinshan smiled at him and said, Your sect's early core forging disciples are not bad. They can be considered as elites among the various sects of the Eastern Sea. However, these mid-core forging disciples are a level lower than Xinling sect's disciples. Although your sect's 3 disciples gave it their all, there were very few eye-catching performances. They can't even compare to Xinling sect's Ouyang Weijian. Ouyang Weijian can be regarded as an astonishing talent even among the large sects of the East Sea. His future is limitless. I've heard that your sect has always been on equal footing with Xinling sect in the North Sea. If he reaches the Dharma manifestation stage in the future, he'll be able to suppress your sect. The words of the cultivator from the Crystal Palace caused displeasure to appear on Reverend Liang Xianfeng and Reverend Xian Shu's faces. When the reverends of the other 4 sects of East Sea heard the words of the Reverend from the Crystal Palace, they did not say anything. They just smiled and watched the battle between the cultivators below, as if they had nothing to do with it. Reverend Guo Xinshan did not get angry. Instead, he smiled and said, Xinling sect has been around for longer than me, Xinling. They've also been the #1 sect in the North Sea for 3,000 years. Their foundation is naturally not something that I, Xinling, can compare to. Even though they're going downhill now, Laozu is the one who holds up the sky. Even if I, Xinling, catch up to him, I can never compare to him. His tone was actually one of weakness. The cultivator from the Crystal Palace smiled and did not say anything else. Instead, he looked at the 4th battle in the field. The people who fought this battle caused Lu Ping's eyes to light up. East Sea had sent out Skyrin's disciple, and Xinling had sent out Reverend Xian Shang. Lu Ping had fought against Reverend Xian Shang a few times before, so he knew that Reverend Xian Shang was stronger than Reverend Xian Lei, so he had a chance to win this battle. Just as he expected, Reverend Xian Shang swung his long spear like a dancing dragon and fought head-on against Skyrin's disciple. The 2 of them fought fiercely, exchanging blows with each other, and the cheers from the crowd grew louder than the last. Skyrin's sword technique required him to press forward with an indomitable will, using offense as defense, and Reverend Xian Shang was also a person who would rather break than bend. He was a person who loved fighting and fighting fiercely. The 2 of them could be said to be evenly matched in their battle, and their fight was also the most dangerous. In the end, both of them were injured, and the spectators were incredibly shocked. In the end, Skyrin's disciple used Heaven-Splitting Sword, one of Skyrin's 7 great sword techniques. Every single slash he delivered brought with it a presence that could split the world. Reverend Xian Shang's spear technique could clearly not compare to Skyrin's disciple's sword technique. But Reverend Xian Shang had found an opening and decided to trade wounds for wounds, causing Skyrin's disciple to hold back. He had a few chances to heavily injure Reverend Xian Shang, but because he would also be heavily injured, he had no choice but to stop midway. Skyrin's disciple could not help but let out a cold snort as he watched the battle from the front of Heaven's Spirit Hall. He was very displeased with his sect's disciple, but he praised Reverend Xian Shang to the side. Skyrin's disciple finally found an opening. His long sword turned into a long arc and stabbed towards Reverend Xian Shang's shoulder. Reverend Xian Shang did not seem to expect that his opponent's flying sword would be so fast. When he saw that it was already too late for him to dodge, the cultivators watching the battle cried out in surprise. Skyrin's disciple also seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The pressure from fighting against Zhenling's disciple was simply too great. This person was basically a desperado. He would rather be cut by his opponent just to leave a mark on his opponent's body. However, at that moment, the gazes of the late-stage core forging cultivators from the various sects watching the battle in front of Heaven's Spirit Hall changed. However, their expressions were different. Zhenling's disciple's lips curled up in delight, while Skyrin's disciple snorted coldly. The other 4 sects of Eastern Sea shook their heads. At the same time, Lu Ping, who had been watching the battle from the side, also smiled faintly. Skyrin's disciple had been careless. The opening on Reverend Xian Shang's shoulder was clearly a trap he had intentionally left behind. The longsword stabbed forward, but Reverend Xian Shang did not dodge. Instead, he leapt forward and pounced on the flying sword. Skyrin's disciple could not stop in time, and the flying sword pierced through Reverend Xian Shang's shoulder. However, Reverend Xian Shang seized the chance to move forward and point his long spear horizontally at Sky Ren's disciple. With one thrust, he pierced through Sky Ren's disciple's protective chi and pointed at the disciple's throat. In the blink of an eye, the situation had suddenly changed. Sky Ren's disciple was dumbfounded, and the Jinling cultivators who were watching the battle were silent for a moment before they suddenly let out deafening cheers. When Lu Ping saw that his sect's middle-stage core forging cultivator had already won a battle, Jinling could once again suppress Xianling's sect. He walked towards the relocation rune, intending to return to Huangli Island. He still had many things to do, and he did not want to stay in this place for too long. If it were not for Tian Shui Laozu's orders, Lu Ping would not have paid any attention to the sparring between the disciples of Eastern Sea. However, right when Lu Ping arrived in front of the relocation rune, a clear shout traveled into his ears. "I am Crystal Palace's Zhang Shiji. I have heard that your sect's water sword immortal, Reverend Lu Xuanping's sword technique, is excellent. Would you be willing to teach me?" Chapter 439. As soon as Lu Ping emerged from the Heaven's Spirit Hall's teleportation formation, he heard a deafening tiger roar. A loud laugh could be heard. "Sire's cultivation is indeed profound. We'll consider this battle a draw, so why don't we call it a draw?" Haha, Sire's cultivation is admirable. Today's battle was truly satisfying. If we continued, then both of us would be heavily injured. Calling it a draw is exactly what I wanted. Lu Ping was stunned. It seemed that he had arrived too late. The disciples of the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea and the disciples of Jinling had probably already begun. However, the person who spoke first made Lu Ping feel rather surprised. From the voice, it was clear that Yao Yong had just fought with someone. However, with Yao Yong's personality, he would either win or lose in a battle. There would always be a result. For him to call it a draw like today was truly inconceivable to Lu Ping. Lu Ping's interest was piqued. He walked towards the direction of the voice, wanting to see just who it was that could make Yao Yong feel a sense of familiarity. However, before Lu Ping had even arrived, Yao Yong's roar could be heard. "Perfect. I have a few jars of fine wine in my dwelling. Sire, you've come from afar. Why don't we drink to our heart's content and see who's better at drinking?" How delightful. I didn't think that I would meet such a straightforward person like Sire today, haha. Before Lu Ping had even arrived at the plaza of the Heaven's Spirit Hall, 2 streaks of red light had already streaked across the sky. Clearly, the 2 people who had just battled had already left. At that moment, a person came walking over. Seeing Lu Ping, he was stunned for a moment before revealing a smile. Lu Ping asked first, "Junior Zhang, are the disciples of our sect currently sparring with the disciples of the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea? Why are you leaving?" Zhang Ziqing smiled. "So it's Senior Lu who has returned. Senior Lu has come at just the right time. Our early core forging disciples have just finished sparring with the disciples of the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea. Now it's time for the mid-core forging disciples to fight. With Senior Lu here, we should be able to win the first battle." "Oh, they've already finished 5 battles? What's the outcome?" The disciples of the East Sea and the North Sea had a total of 10 matches. 5 matches were at the early stage of the core forging realm, and the other 5 matches were at the mid-stage. Zhang Ziqing spoke with excitement and regret. 2 wins and 2 losses. Senior Yao Yong just shook hands with a disciple of Skyrend, and the 2 are now competing in their alcohol tolerance. This result is better than Xianling's sects. I heard that Xianling's sect only won 2 out of the 5 early core forging matches and only won 1 round against Ouyang Weijian in the mid-core forging matches. Now that Senior Martial Brother Lu is here, I'm sure Xianling's sect will be able to win another round in the mid-core forging matches. Lu Ping smiled and said, "The Eastern Seas sects have many crouching tigers and hidden dragons. How can I guarantee victory?" Zhang Ziqing did not refute him. Instead, he said, "Senior Brother, I was confident in that match. However, Senior Brother said that the disciples of the Eastern Seas' various sects are all crouching tigers and hidden dragons. I did not believe it before, but now I have no choice but to believe it." Oh? Lu Ping's interest was piqued. Although he knew more about the Eastern Sea than his peers, Zhang Ziqing often worked under Heaven's Spirit Hall's Enlightened Master Profound Miao and Enlightened Master Guoxianshan. Lu Ping thought Zhang Ziqing would be able to get a lot of information from them. So he asked, "Did Junior Moon hear anything?" Zhang Ziqing said, "Although the disciples sent by the Eastern Seas sects this time are the elites of their respective sects, but according to Martial Uncle Guoxianshan, these disciples are not the best. Moreover, whether it is Senior Martial Brother Ji, Senior Martial Brother Yin, or Senior Martial Brother Yao Yong, they can be said to be the best among our sect's early core forging disciples." Lu Ping nodded. What Zhang Ziqing said was true. The Eastern Seas heritage was indeed better than the Northern Seas. So he asked, "Did Junior Brother Xian and Junior Brother Xian Chu also compete with the Eastern Seas disciples?" Zhang Ziqing smiled. "That's right. If it weren't for the two of them, I'm afraid it wouldn't have been easy for us to win. The two senior brothers each won one match. Senior Brother Yao drew one and lost the other two matches." Zhang Ziqing looked at Lu Ping and said, "Yuan Zhan went up for one match. His cultivation is at the third layer of core forging, and he fought against a Violet Talisman Pavilion disciple for several dozen moves. In the end, he lost." Lu Ping nodded without saying anything. Zhang Ziqing saw that Lu Ping's expression didn't change when he mentioned Yuan Zhan, so he thought for a moment and said, "Originally, Senior Brother Du Feng wanted to go up, but Yuan Zhan took the initiative. Martial Uncle Xian Shu also picked his general. If Senior Brother Du had gone up, perhaps we would have won another match." Lu Ping understood Zhang Ziqing's meaning and smiled. "It's good to hide a bit. The 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea are stronger than us. If we make their disciples suffer, it'll be a bad thing for our sect. After all, the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea are several times stronger than the 10 great sects of the Northern Sea." Zhang Ziqing nodded and pondered. Lu Ping smiled. "Why isn't Junior Brother continuing to observe? Are you going to leave?" Zhang Ziqing smiled. "There's nothing for me to do now, but there's still a pile of things to do in the courtyard." Martial Uncle Xian Yuan pushed all the matters of the courtyard to me, but he's still free and unfettered. Lu Ping patted Zhang Ziqing's shoulder. After the two said their goodbyes, Lu Ping continued to walk towards the square in front of the main hall. In the distance, he saw several late core forging cultivators sitting in front of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Among them, Taoist Guoxianshan was chatting with a cultivator with an arrogant expression. Lu Ping recognized this person's clothing. It was from the Eastern Seas Crystal Palace. Next to them were 2 late core forging cultivators from Jinling and 4 other late core forging cultivators from the other 4 sects of the Eastern Sea. From time to time, their eyes would glance at the 2 cultivators sparring in the square. One of the 2 cultivators from Jinling was Taoist Liang Xianfeng, while the other one Lu Ping didn't know. Presumably, it was Taoist Xian Shu who schemed against Huangli Island. Among these people, there was also a person Lu Ping was familiar with. It was Taoist Qin from the Northern Alliance when Jinling participated in the Northern Alliance Pill gathering in the Eastern Sea. Seeing that Taoist Qin was there, Lu Ping subconsciously didn't want him to discover that he was from the Northern Sea or even Jinling's disciple, so he quietly stood in an inconspicuous corner and watched the battle between the 2 sides. At this time, the Eastern Sea cultivator fighting was a disciple from Wind and Thunder Island, while Jinling's disciple was Lu Ping's acquaintance, Taoist Xian Lei. Taoist Xian Lei learned a powerful thunder attribute magic art. Wind and Thunder Island was famous for their wind attribute and thunder attribute cultivation methods in the Eastern Sea. Naturally, it was a fierce battle between the two. However, in the end, Wind and Thunder Island's cultivators still had the upper hand. Taoist Xian Lei's spiritual essence was not as strong as Wind and Thunder Island's cultivator, so Taoist Xian Lei was defeated in the end. From the side, Lu Ping could clearly see that enlightened Master Xian Lei's fighting experience wasn't any less than the Wind and Thunder Island cultivators. In fact, he was even braver than the Wind and Thunder Island cultivator. Both of them cultivated lightning elemental spells, and they had been competing against each other with many basic spells. The lightning elemental spells they cast were the same, but the Wind and Thunder Island cultivator had a slight advantage in these spells. More often than not, his spells were stronger than enlightened Master Xian Lei's. In addition to the fact that Wind and Thunder Island's cultivator's foundation was stronger than Taoist Xian Lei's, The most likely reason for this phenomenon was that when Daoist Xianlei advanced to the mid-stage core forging realm, he smelted far less spirit items than Wind and Thunder Island's cultivator. Lu Ping had a lot of contact with Daoist Xianlei on Frost Island. He knew that Daoist Xianlei's accumulation when he advanced to the mid-stage core forging realm was enough for him to smelt low-grade Earth-step Thunder Attribute spirit items. However, Thunder Attribute spirit items were rare, so Daoist Xianlei couldn't advance to the mid-stage core forging realm for a long time. In the end, Daoist Xianlei had no choice but to smelt 2 high-grade mystic spirit items. Although it was much stronger than cultivators who smelted 1 spirit item, it was still not comparable to smelting low-grade Earth-step spirit items. This had always been a regret in Daoist Xianlei's heart. Now, this regret finally had the opposite effect. The Northern Sea was barren. Daoist Xianlei wasn't inferior to the disciples of the Eastern Sea in all aspects. However, ordinary elite disciples of Wind and Thunder Island could smelt low-grade Earth-step spirit items when they advanced to the mid-stage core forging realm. As the most elite disciple of Jinling, Daoist Xianlei couldn't obtain a low-grade Earth-step spirit item. In Jinling, a cultivator who smelted a high-grade mystic spirit item when he advanced to the mid-stage core forging realm could become an elite disciple and have the possibility of becoming a Dharma manifestation realm seed in the future, although the possibility was extremely small. In the Eastern Sea, the requirement was to reach the low-grade Earth-step spirit item. Only then could a cultivator be recognized by the sect and be nurtured as a Dharma manifestation seed. The scarcity of spirit items in the Northern Sea was evident. This was also why the Northern Sea cultivators could win more in the early-stage core forging realm. When they reached the mid-stage core forging realm and smelted spirit items, the gap between the Northern Sea and Eastern Sea cultivators widened. The most obvious example was when Xianling sect's early-stage core forging realm cultivators could win 2 matches against Eastern Sea cultivators of the same level. When they reached the mid-stage core forging realm, they could only rely on Xianling sect's number 1 genius, Ouyang Weijian, to win 1 match. The second person to fight was Daoist Xianxing of Jinling. The Eastern Sea sent out a disciple from the Northern Alliance. Unfortunately, Daoist Xianxing's strength wasn't as strong as Daoist Xianlei's, but this Northern Alliance disciple was stronger than the Wind and Thunder Island cultivator. Daoist Xianxing was defeated in a hurry. The third person to fight was Zhenling's disciple. Lu Ping didn't know him, but he heard that his name was Xian Xiao. He was at core forging realm level 5, but unfortunately, he was still defeated by a disciple from the Violet Talisman Pavilion. In the mid-stage core forging realm, Jinling had lost 3 matches in a row. At this time, the surrounding cultivators of Jinling started whispering to each other. The competition between Jinling and Xianling sect had been getting more and more intense in recent years. The 2 sects had to compete in everything. In the previous few battles between the 2 sects, Jinling always had the upper hand. This time, Jinling only needed to win 1 more match to suppress Xianling's sect. However, in the mid-stage core forging realm, Jinling had lost 3 matches in a row. There were only 2 matches left, and East Sea's most powerful disciple, the Crystal Palace, had yet to fight. Once all the mid-stage core forging realm cultivators were defeated, Jinling would become a laughingstock in front of Xianling's sect. Who's the next match? He won't lose again, right? I heard it's Reverend Xianshang. Reverend Xianshang is ranked in the top 10 among the new talents of North Sea. He should be able to win 1 match. It's hard to say. Reverend Xianlei might not be much weaker than Reverend Xianshang, and his opponent is Skyrend, the sect known as the strongest in terms of offense in the ocean. Reverend Xianshang will probably lose this match. As expected, the 5 great sects of East Sea are not something we can compare to. In North Sea, all of the cultivators from our sect who are participating in the battle today have great reputations, but none of them can win against cultivators of the same level as them. In the end, North Sea can't compare to East Sea. No wonder some of the senior cultivators often say that our North Sea is barren. There's still 1 person from our sect who hasn't fought yet. Yes, where is perfected Lu Xinping, the Water Sword Immortal? During the chaotic battle in Heaven Spirit Mountain, Reverend Lu Xinping suppressed several cultivators of the same level as him. What kind of reputation is that? If he's here, he'll definitely be able to win one match against EC, and that Ouyang Weijian won't be able to win. I heard that Reverend Liu Xianping went to Universe Island with Fornax Laozu. He probably hasn't returned yet, so he probably won't be able to make it to this festival. It's a pity. Why did he have to come at this critical moment? Perhaps our sect has other considerations. Think about it. If all the cultivators in the middle stage of the core forging realm in our sect lose, we can still say that our strongest cultivator did not participate in the battle due to other matters. At that time, we can still save some face, but if Reverend Liu Xianping is here today, once he loses, it will mean that our sect cannot compare to Xinling's sect, and Liu Xianping cannot compare to Ouyang Weijian. Forget it. Our sect has always been open and above board, and we're not afraid of being laughed at by others. If we win, and if we lose, we lose. There's no need for us to resort to such petty tricks. We'll only end up being laughed at. The cultivator from the Crystal Palace, who had been watching the battle with Reverend Guo Xianshan in front of the Heaven's Spirit Hall, smiled at Reverend Guo Xianshan and said, "The early core forging disciples of your sect are not bad. They can be considered as elites among the sects of the Eastern Sea. However, these mid-core forging disciples are a level lower than Xinling sects. Although the 3 disciples of your sect gave it their all, they rarely performed anything that caught people's attention. They're not even comparable to Ouyang Weijian of Xinling sect. Ouyang Weijian can be considered as an outstanding talent even among the large sects of the Eastern Sea. His future is limitless. I've heard that your sect has always been on equal footing with Xinling sect in the Northern Sea. If this child reaches the Dharma manifestation stage in the future, he will be able to suppress your sect." The words of the cultivator from the Crystal Palace caused displeasure to appear on Reverend Liang Xianfeng and Reverend Xian Shu's faces. When the reverends of the other 4 sects of the Eastern Sea heard the words of the reverend from the Crystal Palace, they did not say anything. They just smiled and watched the battle between the cultivators below them, as if they were not involved in it. Reverend Guo Xianshan was not angered. Instead, he smiled and said, "Xinling sect has been around for longer than I, Zhenling, and they've also been the #1 sect in the Northern Sea for 3,000 years. Their foundation is naturally not something that I, Zhenling, can compare to. Even though they're going downhill now, Laozu is the one who holds up the sky. Even if I, Zhenling, catch up to him, I still cannot compare to him." His tone was actually one of weakness. The cultivator from the Crystal Palace smiled and did not say anything else. Instead, he turned his gaze to the 4th battle in the field. The people who fought in this battle caused Liu Ping's eyes to brighten. Eastern Sea had sent out Skyrin's disciple, and Xinling had sent out Reverend Xian Shang. Liu Ping had fought against Reverend Xian Shang several times in the past, so he knew that Reverend Xian Shang was stronger than Reverend Xian Lei, so he had a chance to win this battle. Just as he expected, Reverend Xian Shang swung his long spear like a dancing dragon and fought head-on against Skyrin's disciple. The 2 of them fought fiercely, exchanging blows with each other, and the cheers from the crowd grew louder than the last. Skyrin's sword technique required him to press forward with an indomitable will, using offense as defense, and Reverend Xian Shang was also a person who would rather break than bend. He was a person who loved fighting and fighting fiercely. The 2 of them could be said to be evenly matched in their battle, and their fight was also the most dangerous. In the end, both of them were injured, and the spectators were incredibly shocked. Skyrin's disciple finally used one of Skyrin's 7 great sword techniques, Heaven's Splitting Sword. Every single slash he delivered brought with it a presence that could split the world. Reverend Xian Shang's spear technique could clearly not compare to Skyrin's disciple's sword technique, but Reverend Xian Shang had found an opening and decided to trade injury for injury, causing Skyrin's disciple to hold back. He had a few chances to heavily injure Reverend Xian Shang, but because he would also be heavily injured, he had no choice but to stop midway. Skyrin's disciple could not help but let out a cold snort as he watched the battle from the front of Heaven's Spirit Hall. He was very displeased with his sect's disciple, but he praised Reverend Xian Shang to the side. Skyrin's disciple finally found an opening. His longsword turned into a long arc and stabbed towards Reverend Xian Shang's shoulder. Reverend Xian Shang did not seem to expect that his opponent's flying sword would be so fast. When he saw that it was already too late for him to dodge, the spectating cultivators let out cries of surprise. Skyrin's disciple also seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The pressure from fighting against Junling's disciple was simply too great. This person was basically a desperado. He would rather be cut by his opponent, just so he could leave a mark on his opponent's body. However, at that moment, the gazes of the late-stage core forging cultivators from the various sects watching the battle in front of Heaven's Spirit Hall changed. However, their expressions were different. Jinling's disciple's lips curled up into a smile, while Reverend Skyrin's disciple snorted coldly. The other 4 sects of Eastern Sea shook their heads. At the same time, Lu Ping, who had been watching the battle from the side, also smiled faintly. Skyrin's disciple had been careless. The opening on Reverend Xian Shang's shoulder was clearly a trap he had intentionally left behind. The longsword stabbed forward, but Reverend Xian Shang did not dodge. Instead, he leapt forward and pounced on the flying sword. Skyrin's disciple could not stop in time, and the flying sword pierced through Reverend Xian Shang's shoulder. However, Reverend Xian Shang seized the chance to move forward and point his long spear horizontally at Skyrin's disciple. With one thrust, he pierced through Skyrin's disciple's protective chi and pointed at the disciple's throat. In the blink of an eye, the situation had suddenly changed. Skyrin's disciple was dumbfounded, and the Jinling cultivators who were watching the battle were silent for a moment before they suddenly let out deafening cheers. When Lu Ping saw that his sect's middle-stage core forging cultivator had already won a battle, Jinling could once again suppress Xianling's sect. He walked towards the relocation rune, intending to return to Huangli Island. He still had many things to do, and he did not want to stay in this place for too long. If it were not for Tian Shui Laozu's orders, Lu Ping would not have paid any attention to the sparring between the disciples of Eastern Sea. However, right when Lu Ping arrived in front of the relocation rune, a clear shout traveled into his ears. "I am Crystal Palace's Zhang Shiji. I have heard that your sect's water sword immortal, Reverend Lu Xuanping's sword technique, is excellent. Would you be willing to teach me?" Chapter 440. There were more and more cultivators on Huangli Island. Due to Jiang Tianlin and Laozu's presence, there were even core forging realm cultivators appearing on Huangli Island. However, most of these core forging realm cultivators were Jinling cultivators or the core forging realm enlightened masters of Jinling's subordinate clans. Currently, the busiest person on Huangli Island was Hu Lili. When Lu Ping frequently went out and Jiang Tianlin and Laozu were absent, all the matters on Huangli Island were decided by Hu Lili alone. When Lu Ping returned to Huangli Island, he saw a busy scene. Under Hu Lili's orders, many Jinling blood condensation disciples were setting up various formations and restrictions with various spiritual materials. Lu Ping knew that Hu Lili was preparing for enlightened Master Gua Xuanshan's mountain-moving sea-filling technique to expand Huangli Island. Under Hu Lili's command, Song Wu and the other 5 were also in charge of setting up a formation on Huangli Island. Most of these cultivators who were allowed to participate in Huangli Island's expansion plan were outer sect disciples, or even inner sect disciples. Lu Ping didn't expect that Song Wu and the others, who had always been rogue cultivators, would be willing to become outer sect disciples of Jinling. A few days ago, Lu Ping once again guided a small spirit vein from Clear Stream Cave to Huangli Island. Currently, the number of small spirit veins on Huangli Island had increased to 4 and 5 miniature spirit veins. The spirit gathering area on Huangli Island had reached its peak. This was also the reason why Lu Ping was so anxious to invite enlightened Master Gua Xianshan to Huangli Island to cast the mountain-moving sea-filling technique. The size of Huangli Island had become the biggest obstacle to Huangli Island's expansion. Lu Ping returned to his cave dwelling and placed the golden house on top of the spirit vein. The isolated mountain in the golden house had the effect of accumulating spiritual energy. Even without the nourishment of the spirit vein, the density of spiritual energy in the golden house could still be maintained for tens of days. Lu Ping still had a miniature spiritual gathering pearl that he obtained from Tian Shui and Laozu. After burying it in the spirit vein, it was only a matter of time before the 5th small spirit vein appeared on Huangli Island. Other than that, there were 3 miniature spiritual gathering pearls that he obtained from Clear Stream Cave dwelling. Lu Ping thought for a moment and buried them in the spirit vein. This way, the total number of miniature spirit veins would reach 8. If he guided another 2 small spirit veins, the 6 small spirit veins on Huangli Island would be formed. This kind of foundation was something that many medium-sized islands in Jinling couldn't compare to. Just as Lu Ping finished sorting out the spirit veins in the cave dwelling, Chen Lian had already arrived. When he saw Lu Ping, he smiled and said, "I heard that you've been in the limelight on Huanyu Island recently. The dignified Xianling sect's alchemist grandmaster was humiliated by you. Now, the news has spread across the entire North Sea." Lu Ping smiled. "You're the most well-informed." After saying that, he took out 22 of the 24 corals that he obtained from Clear Stream Cave Dwelling. Chun Lian's eyes lit up when he saw the 22 corals. He smiled. "This is really good stuff. Such huge corals must have taken thousands of years to form. Although there are all kinds of spiritual materials mixed together, it's good that it doesn't require too much effort to refine." Lu Ping smiled and took out 2 corals that were formed from second-grade mutated spiritual materials. Chun Lian was dumbfounded when he saw them. After a while, he exclaimed, "We're rich. We're rich. This kind of good stuff can probably be separated from dozens of different mutated spiritual materials. Although there are many, it's still a rare treasure." After saying that, he looked at Lu Ping and hesitated. "Are you going to give this to me as well?" Lu Ping nodded. Chun Lian was overjoyed. However, Lu Ping said, "There's a condition." Chun Lian nodded solemnly and said, "Say it." Lu Ping smiled and said, "I still have some good spiritual materials here. You have to refine 4 of the best magic weapons for me." One was a pair of fire and wind dual attribute magic treasures for Lu Qin. I also needed a wind attribute magic treasure, a water attribute halberd magic treasure, and a pair of ice attribute daggers for my 3 spirit pets, my little snakes. You have to bring out your best skills for these 4 magic weapons. As for the treasure restriction, you have to solve it yourself. In short, each magic weapon has to condense 3 treasure restriction, and it's best not to repeat them. In the future, you have to at least have the opportunity to upgrade them to psychic magic weapons. Chunlian thought for a while and said with a smile, "I know it's not easy to take advantage of you. Well, I'm going all out this time. I still have some good things that I've accumulated over the years. This time, I'll use them all to make a few magic weapon embryos." Chun Lian's current level of attainment in the art of artifact refinement was inseparable from Lu Ping's strong support. The 2 of them had a deep friendship. Chun Lian was also one of Lu Ping's earliest good friends. Thus, there was no need to hold back in their conversation. Lu Ping brought out the gold scale sword. At the same time, there were also the 2 mutated spiritual materials that Lu Ping had collected. Then, he said to Chan Lian, "With these 2 spiritual materials, the gold scale sword should be able to condense the 5th treasure restriction." Given your current level of artifact refinement techniques, upgrading a psychic magic weapon should not be difficult, right? Chun Lian accepted the gold scale sword. At the same time, he carefully inspected the 2 spiritual materials. After pondering for a moment, he said, "These 2 spiritual materials are indeed good items. They are enough to upgrade the gold scale sword's quality. However, you will need to figure out how to make the 5th treasure restriction. I do not have it. Even my master, Sage Enigma Flame, might not have it. You can only ask Patriarch Celestial River for it. Given your current position in the sect and the fact that the sect is relying on you, your request will be easily agreed to." Lu Ping nodded his head, not saying anything. Lu Ping was a Grandmaster Alchemist of Zhenling. He had mastered the pill transformation technique for the blood-condensing pill. Additionally, the spiritual water pill was unique in the North Sea. The spiritual water meridian fostering pill that Lu Ping concocted was regarded as a treasure by Zhenling. It was sold at a sky-high price in the North Sea's world of cultivation. Additionally, its quantity was extremely limited. At present, Lu Ping could be said to be the #1 alchemist in Zhenling, with the exception of Tianlu Laozu. Given his status, it was naturally very easy for Lu Ping to ask the sect for a spiritual barrier. In fact, Zhenling welcomed Lu Ping's actions. If Lu Ping had to deal with everything himself, unlike Zhenling, that was something that the high-level cultivators of Zhenling did not want to see. Lu Ping stretched his left hand out and grasped something. Next, his right hand stroked his left hand, and a faint blue sword immediately appeared in Lu Ping's left hand. Wielding the water spirit sword, Lu Ping said, "At present, the water spirit sword has only condensed out 2 barriers. Given its quality, it can easily condense out a 3rd barrier. A pity." Although the water spirit sword had repeatedly performed miraculous feats in Lu Ping's hands, as Lu Ping's cultivation gradually increased, the enemies he faced also grew stronger. The water spirit sword was only an ordinary magic treasure that had condensed out 2 barriers. Even if it had a strange invisibility effect, its power was somewhat lacking. Chun Lian also said helplessly, "Not only is the invisible flying sword's quality rare, but its barrier is also the rarest. Our sect originally only had 1 barrier, which was passed down from failing sect. The other barrier was found in the shapeless sword art you obtained. If you want to condense the 3rd barrier, it will depend on your luck." Chun Lian took the golden scale sword with him, but Lu Ping planned to take advantage of this time to properly digest what he had accumulated. Although Lu Ping had not delayed his cultivation because of constantly going out, after advancing to the middle stage, his cultivation speed had plummeted, so he needed to settle down and meditate in seclusion for a period of time. After sending a sound-transmitting sword to Hu Lily, Lu Ping gave her some instructions for the upcoming period of time. Then, he sealed his cave abode and began to meditate in seclusion. Although the spirit-gathering pearl that he had just buried had yet to evolve into a spirit vein, there were already 4 small spirit veins and 5 miniature spirit veins in the cave abode, which was enough for Lu Ping to cultivate. However, Lu Ping was not satisfied with just this. In one breath, he laid down a spirit-gathering formation with 36 high-grade spirit stones, causing the density of the spiritual qi in the cave abode to almost turn into liquid. Then, he placed the golden house on top of the spirit vein and the spirit-gathering formation, absorbing all the dense spiritual qi in the cave abode. Lu Ping did not need to lay down a spirit-gathering formation to assist his cultivation. The small mountain in the golden house was a special spirit-gathering formation. Moreover, it was much more exquisite than the spirit-gathering formation set up by cultivators like Lu Ping and Hu Lily, who specialized in formations. Moreover, the North Sea wave listening technique that Lu Ping was cultivating was a cultivation technique that required a huge amount of spiritual qi. This cultivation technique itself was like a spirit-gathering formation, so there was no need for Lu Ping to gather spiritual qi. If it were not for the fact that there were 4 to 5 small spirit veins here, the spiritual qi would not be enough, so there was no need for him to gather it. Just like that, half a year passed. On top of the small mountain in the golden house, there was a magnificent palace. This was the central palace that Lu Ping had obtained from the clear stream abode. At this moment, inside the palace, Wan Yu looked at the surroundings of the palace and clicked her tongue. This is indeed an excellent spatial magic tool. Although it cannot compare to a large-scale spatial magic tool like the Golden House, it is still the work of Fa Xiang Laozu. It is a pity that this palace lacks many decorations, so it looks empty. Lu Ping turned a black stone over and over in his hand. The green light in his eyes flickered continuously, but he still could not find anything. After a while, he put the stone down and asked, "What secret does this black jade stone contain? Why did you almost expose it during the North Sea Palace's alchemist gathering? Although it is a high-grade mystic-level Earth attribute heaven and Earth spirit object, don't tell me that it was just to prepare for Debao's advancement to the mid-stage of the core forging realm. Debao is becoming more and more lazy in his cultivation. I'm afraid it will take decades for him to advance to the mid-stage of the core forging realm." Wan Yu chuckled and said, "Of course it is. I didn't think that I would encounter such an object in the North Sea. It looks like the North Sea is not as barren as the cultivation world thinks." Lu Ping smiled and said, "Just a single black jade stone is enough to make you feel so emotional. The barrenness of the North Sea cannot be improved by a single heaven and earth spirit object." Wan Yu said seriously, "That may not be the case. The cultivation world knows that the North Sea is barren, but that is only because the true treasures hidden in the North Sea have not been discovered yet." Wan Yu did not wait for Lu Ping to refute and continued, "Let's talk about the large-scale spirit or vein on Frost Island. The North Sea cultivation world has been developing for tens of thousands of years. Who would have thought that the snow-covered frost island would hide such great wealth? Although this large-scale spirit or vein alone is not enough to completely change the barrenness of the North Sea, who can deny that there are other cultivation resources hidden in unknown places in the North Sea? This time, Lu Ping did not say anything. After thinking for a moment, he smiled and said, "Let's not talk about anything else. Just tell me what secrets this black jade stone contains." Luan Yu smiled mysteriously and said, "Do you know about growing soil?" Chapter 441. Growing Soil? Lu Ping was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He exclaimed, "Growing soil?" Luan Yu nodded and laughed lightly. Indeed, it is a natural treasure that can shorten the growth period of plants. It is said to be one of the few natural treasures in the world of cultivation. The growing soil was not a spiritual object of heaven and earth. Instead, it was a mysterious object of heaven and earth. However, this mysterious object of heaven and earth did not have the same effect as other mysterious objects of heaven and earth that could be used by cultivators to condense minor magical powers. However, the growing soil had another use that was regarded as heaven-defying in the cultivation world. It could greatly shorten the time needed for plants to mature. Because of this use, growing soil's status in the world of cultivation was no less than that of a heaven-tier natural treasure. Lu Ping pointed at the black jade stone on the ground and asked in disbelief, "You mean to say that there is growing soil hidden within this black jade stone?" Luan Yu laughed. "Although I do not have a magical power like the three pure eyes, the Wood Luan tribe is most proficient in cultivating spirit grass and spirit trees. Naturally, we have a secret technique to identify a treasure like growing soil." Lu Ping nodded. The Wood Luan tribe naturally had their own special abilities. This was something that Lu Ping believed. Lu Ping looked at the black jade stone and said, "Is this growing soil mixed within the black jade stone, or is it wrapped within?" If it was mixed within, then in order to obtain the growing soil, they would have to grind the black jade stone into pieces and extract the growing soil. If it was just wrapped within, then they would only need to split the black jade stone, and it would not damage the spirit of the black jade stone. After all, this earth-type natural treasure was of the upper mystic level, and it would be perfect for Debeo to smelt in the future. Luan Yu laughed. "Don't worry. The gains this time will definitely be worth the elixir that Fornax Laozu spent on breaking through to the Dharma stage." Luan Yu carefully cut the black jade stone into two halves. The center of the black jade stone was indeed hollow, but there was a fist-sized yellow ball of earth within it. This was the famous growing soil of the cultivation world. Among the natural treasures that corresponded to the living soil, there was a kind of earth attribute natural treasure called the living soil. Although this kind of natural treasure did not have the special effect of stimulating the growth of spirit herbs like the living soil, it had the characteristic of endless growth. It was said that if a small piece of the living soil was cut off, as long as there were enough spirit chi and spirit stones, it could be cultivated into a complete piece of living soil. Of course, the spirit chi and spirit stones required would be an astronomical figure. The living soil was an earth-type, mid-grade heaven-ranked spiritual earth of the world. It was even more valuable than the profound essence heavy water that Lu Ping had refined. However, in the world of cultivation, this treasure was only on par with the living soil. From this, one could see just how valuable the living soil was in the world of cultivation. Luan Yu sniffed the living soil, then tossed it to Lu Ping and said, "The quality is not bad. At the very least, this piece of living soil should be enough for those treasures of yours and that 3,000-year-old spirit herb garden of yours." When Lu Ping saw that Luan Yu had casually tossed it away, he hastily and carefully caught it. He anxiously said, Hey, this is the living soil. Every single particle is priceless. How can you be so disrespectful?" Luan Yu was taken aback. He pointed at Lu Ping and said with a smile, "I thought that you, the boy of many treasures, would be used to seeing all kinds of rare treasures. You should be as calm as still water. Who would have thought that this piece of living soil would cause you to lose your composure like this?" Lu Ping could not be bothered with Luan Yu. In his mind, He was already thinking about how to use this fist-sized piece of living soil. Luan Yu, who was standing to the side, was silent for a moment. Then, he said, "Actually, I have something to ask of you this time." Lu Ping was somewhat stunned. He looked at Luan Yu, then straightened his body and said with a solemn expression, "Brother Luan Yu, please speak." Luan Yu chuckled and said, "My cultivation has already advanced to the third layer of core forging. I think that in another 3 to 5 years, I will be able to refine a spiritual object and advance to the middle stage of core forging. However, the identity of my Luan clan is too sensitive. In the cultivation world, cultivators of the same level are fine. If I were to encounter a cultivator with a higher cultivation than me, it would be a disaster. Therefore, I will have to ask Brother Lu to take care of this spiritual object." Lu Ping was startled. When he raised his head to look outside the hall, he saw the lush spirit monster peach tree at the foot of the small mountain. He suddenly realized, Brother Luan Yu is interested in the spiritual wood on the spirit monster peach tree? When Luan Yu saw that Lu Ping understood his intentions, he bluntly said, "I am ashamed. It is exactly so. The spiritual wood is one of the most suitable spiritual objects for Monster Clan cultivators to use to refine a gold core. Previously, I had a simple communication with the spirit monster peach tree. The spiritual wood is no longer of much use to it, but the spirit monster peach tree is, after all, Brother Lu's spiritual pet. Therefore, I must obtain Brother Lu's consent." Lu Ping pondered for a moment. This piece of spiritual wood was a piece of low-grade earth step spiritual wood. Moreover, it was very heavy. Originally, it was prepared by Lu Ping for Hu Lily to advance to the middle stage of the core forging realm. But, as Luan Yu said, this piece of spiritual wood was most suitable for Monster Clan cultivators. Compared to other earth step spiritual woods, the spiritual wood was undoubtedly the most unsuitable for Hu Lily. Of course, even if it was unsuitable, it was still better than Hu Lily refining a profound spiritual wood. What's more, Hu Lily was proficient in the Tao of arrays, so the growth of her cultivation was very slow. Even with the dissolving heart pill that Lu Ping had left for her, which forcibly increased her cultivation to the third stage of the core forging realm, it was impossible for her to accumulate enough foundation to refine an earth step spiritual object to advance to the middle stage of the core forging realm. At that time, Lu Ping would just have to find another wood attribute earth step spiritual object for her. At the very least, the amount of azure billow water in Lu Ping's hands was equivalent to 3 times the amount of ordinary low-grade earth step spiritual water. It was more than enough to exchange for an earth step spiritual object. Although Luan Yu had been living in seclusion in the House of Gold all these years, he had also been used by Lu Ping as a free alchemist for several years. One must know that Luan Yu was an out-and-out alchemy grandmaster. Because of this, Lu Ping was able to free himself from a portion of the sect's alchemy tasks and devote more time to cultivation. Moreover, the large spiritual grassland that had been opened up in the House of Gold was also Luan Yu's achievement. This kind of help to Lu Ping could not be said to be small. "That's fine." Lu Ping made up his mind and said, "Brother Luan, you can take this psychic wood and use it first." Luan Yu was naturally overjoyed. Together with Lu Ping, he arrived in front of the spirit demon peach tree and was about to pluck the psychic wood from its body. Unexpectedly, when the spirit demon peach tree saw Lu Ping, its branches and leaves shook with a rustling sound. It seemed that it was somewhat unwilling. Luan Yu was good at communicating with plants and couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. He asked, "Little peach tree, didn't we agree before? Why are you going back on your words now?" Although the spirit demon peach tree had unlocked its spiritual wisdom, it could not speak and could only use its weak consciousness to express its sorrow. Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "Little peach tree, I've been collecting the cultivation method that you want all these years. However, you should also know that the cultivation method for spirit demon trees is very rare. I also can't let others know that you're in my hands. Otherwise, not only me, but even you will be in big trouble. That's why until now, I haven't been able to collect a cultivation method that can allow you to cultivate. However, this time, I found this." As Lu Ping spoke, he let the spirit demon peach tree's consciousness feel the growing soil in his hand. As expected, the spirit demon peach tree emitted waves of joyful emotions. It seemed to be saying to Lu Ping, "I'm hungry." Lu Ping smiled slightly and broke off a corner of the growing soil that was the size of a fist. Then, he crushed this small piece of growing soil into powder and scattered it around the roots of the spirit demon peach tree. The soil at the roots of the spirit demon peach tree immediately stirred up, covering this thin layer of growing soil under the soil layer. As if seeing immediate results, Lu Ping seemed to feel that the spirit demon peach tree seemed to be full of spirit. The flower buds on the branches also became bright and beautiful, as if they would bloom at any time. Luan Yu received the psychic wood as she wished, and Lu Ping crushed a small piece of growing soil and scattered it into the white jade lotus pond. In the past, Lu Ping received the rank 9 white jade lotus king in the land of 100 flowers and refined it together with the 12 gentian beads into Lu Ping's life source artifact. And Lu Ping chose 3 of the 9 lotus seeds from the white jade lotus king and placed them into the pond that only had 1/3 of the Kuei water essence left. After many years of breeding, the remaining 1/3 of the Kuei water essence had once again shrunk to the shallow bottom of the pond, and the 3 lotus seeds also revealed a few lotus leaves, appearing soft and weak in the pond. Lu Ping looked at these 3 lotus flowers and sighed. This place was not like the land of 100 flowers where after thousands of years of breeding, it could automatically condense the Kuei water essence. If he wanted these 3 lotus flowers to continue to grow, he must collect the Kuei water essence, a rare treasure of heaven and earth. Lu Ping sprinkled a small piece of growing soil under the golden nut tree. 17 of the 36 golden nuts on this tree had matured, and Lu Ping had refined them into golden resilience pills. Now, the strength of Lu Ping's body was comparable to a low-level artifact without the use of Zhen Yuan. The rest of the growing soil was mainly sprinkled by Lu Ping on the small lonely mountain in the spirit grass garden that had been opened by Zhong Xian Laozu for planting 3,000 years of spirit grass. The rest was also sprinkled in several newly opened important spirit grass gardens. Finally, in Lu Ping's hands, there was also a piece of growing soil that was about 1/4 of the size. Lu Ping carefully stored it in a jade marrow box, in case of emergencies. Another half a year passed. Lu Ping sat cross-legged in the cultivation room of the palace on the top of the small, lonely mountain. He lifted the lid of the Lin Chuan cauldron, and the blue water inside was collected into a jade bowl. Then, a round and plump spirit pill slowly flew out of the Lin Chuan cauldron and was directly put into a jade marrow box by Lu Ping. And in this jade marrow box, there were already 2 spirit pills. In order to refine these 3 bone-forging pills, Lu Ping had picked 5 spirit monster peaches from the spirit monster peach tree. Originally, there were 13 spirit monster peaches left, but now there were only 8. This caused the small peach tree to complain. When it saw Lu Ping, it was a pitiful scene. The branches and leaves trembled all over, making Lu Ping feel quite embarrassed. Fortunately, after wasting dozens of 3,000 years of spirit grass and hundreds of 1,000 years of spirit grass, Lu Ping finally succeeded in refining these 3 bone-forging pills of the half-step Dharma realm. With these 3 bone-forging pills, Lu Ping could completely increase his body strength to the level of a mid-level artifact. Chapter 442. Lu Ping's seclusion only lasted for a year before he had no choice but to come out again. This was because Hu Lily had already filled the entire Huangli Island with restrictions and arrays, preparing for Reverend Guoxianshan to use the art of moving mountains and filling seas. Now that Reverend Guoxianshan had once again returned to Huangli Island, Lu Ping naturally couldn't hide in his cave dwelling and go into seclusion. Fortunately, Tianlin Laozu was on Huangli Island. Although Lu Ping was the master, he was only accompanying him. Reverend Guoxianshan was obviously very knowledgeable about geomancy. After setting foot on Huangli Island, he looked towards Lu Ping's cave dwelling in surprise and said, "I didn't expect that Huangli Island would rise to another level after a year or 2. I'm afraid there's already half a neutral spiritual vein on the island. I've heard that many of our sect's idol core forging cultivators also go out to hunt through Huangli Island. Even I'm envious of your achievements." Lu Ping smiled and said, "Martial Uncle must be joking. Martial Uncle is in charge of the sect. How could he be interested in this disciple's belongings?" Reverend Guoxianshan said meaningfully. You really have a lot of belongings. Lu Ping nodded as if he understood something and said, this disciple is naturally not a miser. Only by being willing and willing can I obtain more. Enlightened Master Guoxianshan pointed at Lu Ping and scolded jokingly, your shameless behavior reminds me of a certain someone, but you don't have to worry, the sect's ancestors have a good impression of you. Even if others have their opinions, you don't have to worry about it. It's just that this sedan chair has to be carried by everyone. Reverend Guoxianshan pointed at Lu Ping and said with a smile, this is for you. Seeing that Lu Ping understood his words, Reverend Guoxianshan took out a storage pouch out of nowhere and threw it to Lu Ping, saying, this is for you. Lu Ping was surprised, but he still scanned the storage pouch and couldn't help but say, why is there so much? Reverend Guoxianshan looked at Lu Ping with a hint of ridicule and said, what? The great treasure boy is also confused by a mere few hundred spirit stones? Lu Ping was speechless and said, Martial uncle, this is 500 upper-grade spirit stones. Even with the spirit mine on Frost Island, there shouldn't be so many upper-grade spirit stones, right? Even though Lu Ping was exaggerating, he couldn't wait to put these 500 upper-grade spirit stones into his storage pouch as soon as possible. In the past year, in order to increase his cultivation, Lu Ping had set up the Great Spirit Transformation formation twice in a row, and each time, he used 36 upper-grade spirit stones. In addition to the spirit stones needed to refine medicinal pills during this period of time, the 100 or so upper-grade spirit stones that Lu Ping had accumulated with great difficulty were all gone in an instant. In the end, he had no choice but to use some middle-grade spirit stones to make up for it. Reverend Guoxianshan smiled and said, during the last trip to Frost Island, you, Xianlei, Xianshang, and the others were each rewarded with 200 upper-grade spirit stones for discovering a large spirit mine. During that time, you also discovered a middle-grade spirit mine on your own. This has never happened before in our sect, so the sect decided to reward you with another 200 upper-grade spirit stones. Last year, you forced Crystal Palace's Zhang Shiji to not even see your shadow with just 2 swords, greatly increasing our sect's prestige. Therefore, the sect rewarded you with another 100 upper-grade spirit stones. Reverend Guoxianshan paused for a moment and said, originally, the sect wanted to give you some other benefits, but Senior Sister Tianling said that all the rewards will be given according to the amount of upper-grade spirit stones. Therefore, this is what you will get. Lu Ping praised his teacher's brilliance and strength in his heart. As he put the 500 upper-grade spirit stones into his storage ring, he said humbly, this is what a disciple should do. From afar, Hu Lily came over and reported to Reverend Guoxianshan that the formations and restrictions required to cast the art of mountain moving and sea filling had all been prepared. Reverend Guoxianshan nodded and walked towards the eye of the formation. At the core of the formation that Hu Lily had spent a great amount of time and precious materials to set up, Tianlin Laozu and Reverend Chu Xuanqing had been waiting for a long time. When Reverend Chu saw Reverend Guoxianshan walking over, he looked to his left and right and asked with a strange smile, since Senior Brother Guo is going to show his might, why didn't Junior Brother Xianin come today? Reverend Guoxianshan was taken aback and said, it seems that Junior Brother Xianin has been busy lately. There hasn't been any news about him in Heaven's Spirit Mountain for a long time. Oh, Reverend Chu was also a little curious and said, this is interesting. Junior Brother Xianin has rarely left Heaven's Spirit Mountain for the past few decades, and now is the critical moment for him to achieve Golden Core. If it wasn't for something urgent, he wouldn't have left Heaven's Spirit Mountain. Reverend Chu Xuanqing saw that Lu Ping was thinking about something, so he asked, Little Lu, Junior Brother Xuanin's disciple has a good relationship with you. Have you heard any news about Junior Brother Xianin from his disciple? Reverend Chu Xuanqing knew that Lu Ping was on good terms with Yin Xianchu and the others. After Lu Ping became an alchemy grandmaster, the pills that these friends needed to cultivate were usually refined by Lu Ping. Huangli Island had also become a frequent destination for his friends. Therefore, Reverend Chu Xuanqing asked this question. When Lu Ping heard the two of them talk about Reverend Xianin, Lu Ping remembered the conversation he overheard between Reverend Xianin and another unfamiliar cultivator at the bottom of the sea. Reverend Xuanin's disappearance during this period of time could also have something to do with the matter of avenging Reverend Xuanin's wife. However, it was clear that Lu Ping couldn't reveal this matter. Reverend Chu Xuanqing suddenly asked, so Lu Ping could only answer, how would this disciple know? Reverend Chu Xuanqing was actually just asking. He wasn't sure that Lu Ping knew the whereabouts of Reverend Xianin. Seeing that Lu Ping didn't know, he didn't continue asking about this matter. Reverend Chu Xuanqing was a 9th-level core forging cultivator who was about to become a golden core cultivator. With this level of cultivation, besides Dharma adepts, almost no one in the North Sea could pose a threat to him. Moreover, Reverend Xianin was proficient in the art of concealment and assassination. Cultivators of the same level would only be afraid of him. Who would dare to easily plot against him? After greeting Tianling Laozu, Reverend Gua Xianshan solemnly ascended the altar that Hu Lili and the others had built. As Reverend Gua Xianshan walked towards the top of the altar, a treasure that looked like a mountain slowly rose from the top of Reverend Gui Xuanshan's head. The mountain gradually enlarged in midair. Lu Ping felt his feet sink, as if there was a force pressing down on his body, trying to imprison him to the ground. Lu Ping raised his head to look at the mountain above the altar that was growing larger and larger. He knew that this was the effect of Reverend Gua Xuanshan's moving mountains and filling seas technique. When he turned to look at Tianling Laozu and Reverend Chu, both of them had a calm expression on their faces. It was obvious that this pressure was not even worth mentioning to them. On the other side, Hu Lili seemed to have some understanding of this moving mountains and filling seas technique. At this moment, she had already hidden tens of feet away. Lu Ping's body trembled with true essence, and a blue mist spread out from his body. The mist immediately returned to his body. The pressure on his body immediately relaxed, and he regained control of his body. Not far away, Reverend Chu Xuanqing and Tianling Laozu conversed. Reverend Chu Xuanqing sighed with emotion and said, "This kid's true essence is very strong. Senior Marshal Brother Gua's flying mountain treasure is not something that ordinary mid-core forging cultivators can casually break free from." However, Ancestor Tianlin was a little puzzled. Compared to his quintessential essence, which far surpasses cultivators of the same level, I'm more interested in the strength of this kid's fleshly body. Looks like this kid has quite a lot of good stuff on him. He's even collected some rare elixirs that can strengthen the fleshly body. The strength of his fleshly body is almost no weaker than a mid-grade magic item. At this moment, a great pressure suddenly burst out from the center of the altar. The entire altar and the surrounding arrays and restrictions seemed to have been activated by Reverend Gua Xianshan. A gray light flickered and the entire Huangli Island suddenly trembled. Although the cultivators entering and leaving Huangli Island had already been notified, when Reverend Gua Xuanshan's moving mountains and filling seas technique began to display its earth-shattering might, the cultivators on the island were shocked. Taoist Master Gua Xianshan wore a solemn expression on his face. With a stretch of his right hand, a short black whip appeared in his hand, following which, the shadow of the whip pierced through the air. A series of muffled explosions could be heard from the distant horizon of the sea. As the short whip lashed down, the entire Huangli Island trembled violently. This was the power of Reverend Gua Xuanshan's natal magic treasure, the Mountain Driving Whip. The Mountain Driving Whip was a spirit-nurturing magic treasure that had been refined with 7 Tao treasures. Under the effects of the moving mountains and filling seas technique, it could slowly move an island several tens of li away that had already been connected to Huangli Island's array formation. As Reverend Gua Xianshan continued to swing the Mountain Driving Whip in his hand, rings of earthen yellow light fell from the top of the flying mountain peak above his head and spread out towards the distant sea. The altar beneath Gua Xuanshan's feet released a series of crisp cracking sounds, and a huge crack extended from the altar to the ground. In the blink of an eye, Reverend Gua Xianshan had lashed out 18 times with the Mountain Driving Whip in his hand. The surface of the altar was already covered with cracks, and even the solid ground underneath the altar had a 1-foot-wide crack, slowly extending to a distance of several hundred feet. As the last whip shadow fell, Huangli Island once again trembled violently. Muffled rumbling noises came from the distant seabed, as if a giant beast was roaring furiously. Immediately, A small spirit vein from Lu Ping's cave abode was drawn over and temporarily placed at the core of the array formation. It seemed to have replaced the role of Reverend Guo Xianshan in the altar. Reverend Guo Xianshan slowly walked down from the altar. Just as he was about to leave the altar, the 30-zhang tall altar suddenly collapsed. As if he had already expected this, Reverend Guo turned to Lu Ping and said, "This island should be the one closest to Huangli Island, right?" The art of moving the mountains and filling the seas is a long process. Although this divine art is successful, it will take at least a month for the island to move on its own and connect to Huangli Island even with the support of this spirit vein. Lu Ping nodded to show that he understood. He handed over a bottle of medicinal pills with both hands and said, "Martial uncle, please recover your true essence first, then move to the next altar to perform the divine ability." Reverend Guo Xianshan laughed and said, "There's no hurry. With the help of the array formation and the altar, we can save most of the trouble. With the true essence in the old man's body, he can perform the mountain-moving, sea-filling divine ability again and pull the other island over." However, Reverend Guo Xianshan seemed to have thought of something and took the jade bottle from Lu Ping's hand. He opened it and said with joy, "Not bad. It's an extremely rare spirit-tempering pill in the late core forging stage. Isn't this pill only refined by the North Sea's Liao family? I didn't expect you to have it here." Reverend Chu, who was at the side, had already heard the conversation between the two. He quickly walked over and said, "Little brat Lu Ping can actually refine a spirit-tempering pill?" The old man had personally looked for Liao Ruinjia 3 times and only managed to get 1 bottle. "I didn't expect you to already have the pill recipe. This won't do. The old man will immediately gather some spirit herbs for you. You have to refine at least 3 bottles of spirit-tempering pill for the old man." Chapter 443. There were a total of 4 altars built on Huangli Island, corresponding to the 4 islands that needed to be moved. The first island was the location of Shang Tao's cave, where Lu Ping had found the alchemy inheritance. Jinren Guo first moved this island, and the mountain-driving whip produced a total of 18 whip shadows before he completed the mountain-driving whip. As for the other 3 islands and reefs, the amount of true yuan and dermic powers expended by Jinren Guo varied according to the distance from Huangli Island and the size of the islands and reefs. The mountain-driving whip had produced 27, 36, and the highest number was 49. Even though Zhenren Guo Xianshan had achieved the 7th grade golden core and was only a step away from the Dharma stage, it still took him 7 days to complete the task. Every time he successfully moved an island, Lu Ping had to temporarily confine a small spirit vein at the altar where Zhenren Guo was located. This was also the place where the formation eye of the mountain-driving formation was located. After Zhenren Guo completed the mountain-driving formation, it could replace him to support the operation of the formation and speed up the island's movement in the direction of Huangli Island. Fortunately, the spirit-gathering pearl that Lu Ping had buried a small spirit vein a year ago had nurtured another small spirit vein. In addition to the 8 small spirit veins, the total number of spirit veins on Huangli Island was now close to 6 small spirit veins, which was more than enough to support the mountain-driving formation. After Zhenren Guo completed the mountain-driving formation, Lu Ping gave him 2 bottles of spirit-tempering pills as a congratulatory gift. He also gave blood-condensing pills, spirit water meridian nourishing pills, and dozens of other pills that he had refined for the sect during this period to be brought back to the sect. After 20 days, the silhouette of the first island could be vaguely seen in the distance. A month later, this island finally connected with Huangli Island. After another half a month, the earth vein under the island began to connect with Huangli Island, and the small spirit vein that supported the operation of the formation returned to Lu Ping's cave. At this time, a cultivator named Tian Yu also found the first spiritual gathering place on the land that had just become part of Huangli Island. This was the first time that a spiritual gathering place had been discovered since the spiritual gathering places on Huangli Island had become saturated. More than a year had passed since the reefs were pulled over and the earth veins under the island merged with Huangli Island. With the support of a large number of high-grade spirit stones, the support of several spirit veins, and the continuous supply of spirit pellets, Lu Ping's cultivation base finally made significant progress. He was now moving towards the peak of the fourth-layer core forging realm. However, he still wasn't sure when he would be able to break through to the fifth layer. However, inspired by Enlightened Master Gua Xuanshan's Fei Lai Peak Mystic Treasure, Lu Ping asked Enlightened Master Gua Xianshan for another talisman treasure and completed the third talisman treasure, Landslide. Unfortunately, Enlightened Master Gua Xianshan cultivated an earth elemental cultivation method, which was incompatible with Lu Ping's water elemental cultivation method. 5 of the 6 talisman treasures on Fei Lai Peak were pure earth elemental treasures, and only one was a combination of the earth elemental and water elemental treasures. With Landslide's current grade, unless Lu Ping could find spirit materials of higher quality to further upgrade it, it would be extremely difficult to upgrade it into a spirit-connected mystic treasure. In the Carefree Hall at the top of Heaven's Spirit Mountain, Tian Fan, Tian Jiang, Tian Lu, and Tian Lin sat. Tian Fan Laozu looked at Tian Lin Laozu, took out a jade slip from his sleeve, and said, "This is the recipe for the spirit-forging pill that Xianqin collected in the East Sea. It is said that a cultivator from the Crystal Palace found it in Fei Ling Sect's Zhong, Xian Laozu's cave. Xianqin gave this recipe to Senior Tian Xiang to bring back to the sect. Although this recipe only lists the various spiritual materials needed to refine the spirit-forging pill, it is still valuable." After Tian Jiang and Tian Lu Laozu looked at the recipe, Tian Lin Laozu took it from them expressionlessly, then returned it to Tian Fan Laozu. Tian Fan Laozu handed the recipe directly to Tian Lu Laozu, saying, "This recipe should be given to Junior Tian Lu. The Elixir Pavilion should make some preparations according to the ingredients listed in the recipe. If our sect is lucky enough to obtain the recipe for the spirit-forging pill, Junior Tian Lu can refine it immediately." Tian Jiang Laozu smiled. Previously, when Xinling sect showed off the recipe for the spirit-forging pill in the North Sea Palace, it must be this item, right? The Crystal Palace only shared a useless jade slip with Xinling sect. Is it worth it for them to be so arrogant? Tian Lin Laozu smiled. That's not the same. You should know that the 5 great sects of the East Sea visiting the 10 great sects of the North Sea is, to put it bluntly, a form of assistance from the 5 great sects of the East Sea. On the surface, it's to fight against the monster clan together, but in reality, it's to hope that the North Sea's cultivation world can become the East Sea's vassal. Xinling sect and our sect are the sects that the East Sea's sects hope to lead. However, it seems that Xinling sect's position in the East Sea sects is obviously higher than ours. Although our sect has taken advantage of the East Sea's sects to loot a lot of benefits, at least they haven't given us the recipe for the spirit-forging pill. Tian Fan Laozu smiled. That's perfect. Although the North Sea's cultivation world is led by our sect and Xinling sect, the 10 great sects all have mid-stage core forging cultivators, so the gap between the sects isn't too big. If the sects don't have too many differences, Xinling sect and Xinling sect may be able to take the lead. However, if the benefits involved are too great and the differences are too serious, then the sects will be in a state of disunity, making the entire North Sea's cultivation world a vassal of the East Sea's sects. Let Xinling sect taste the bitter fruit of making the entire North Sea's cultivation world a vassal of the East Sea's sections. For now, we should accumulate our strength and wait and see. Tianlu Laozu glanced at Tian Lin Laozu, then turned to Tian Fan Laozu and asked, "How is Xianqin doing in the East Sea?" Tian Fan Laozu smiled. "You are Xuanqin's teacher. Who knows her better than you? She successfully entered the Dharma stage 2 years ago. If she returns to our sect, she will be called Xianqin Laozu. However, she has joined an organization called Boudoir in the East Sea. This organization is very famous in the East Sea. It seems that they have a great cultivator as their backer, and they are specifically against the Crystal Palace. With Xuanqin's Grandmaster alchemy skills, she is naturally a high-level cultivator in the organization. Otherwise, how could the half-step recipe for the spirit-forging pill that the Crystal Palace obtained be in Xuanqin's hands?" Tianjiang Laozu asked nervously, "Since there is a great cultivator in the boudoir, it must be stronger than our sect. Xianqin is also a genius, so she is naturally high up in the boudoir. So, is Xianqin still willing to return to our sect?" Tianjiang Laozu's words clearly pointed out what was on the minds of the other Laozu. After a while, Tian Fanlaozu said, since the ancient times, children do not dislike their mothers for being ugly, and dogs do not dislike their families for being poor. Xianqin is my disciple. Even though she left in anger, Zhenling is the place where she grew up for hundreds of years. With her teachers and fellow disciples, I think Xianqin will understand. After saying this, it seemed that Tian Fanlaozu himself did not have much confidence, so he added, "What's more, senior brother Tianxiang is in the fallen secret land." When Xianqin left East Sea, senior brother Tianxiang immediately guarded the fallen secret land. Now it seems that besides fighting for the right to speak in the fallen secret land for our sect, it is also for Xianqin. Now that Xianqin has been sending news back to the cultivation world of the East Sea, and this time she even sent this recipe, I think it must be a problem. Tian Lu Laozu carefully looked at the recipe again and said with some difficulty, not to mention the fact that there is no refining method for this recipe, the spirit herbs used are not ordinary. Also, the most important ingredient, the wonder dew, has not been heard of in the cultivation world for nearly 1,000 years. Even if our sect was lucky enough to obtain the wonder dew, the Na Chuan cauldron has now been upgraded to a magic treasure cauldron, so it is impossible to refine it on a large scale. It is already very fortunate that we were able to gather one cauldron. Tian Fanlaozu smiled bitterly and said, "How could old man not know this? But it is not easy to have this half of the recipe. Don't forget that the reason why Fei Ling's sect was exterminated was because this spirit-forging pill was coveted by all sections. Therefore, even this half of the recipe must be kept a secret. Apart from junior brother Tianlu, I think only Xian Yin and Xian Yu, the two alchemy grandmasters who can refine late core forging pills, should know about it. Don't tell anyone else." At this time, Tian Lin Laozu said, "I'm afraid Martial Uncle still doesn't know, but Tian Ling's ninth disciple, Lu Ping, can also refine late core forging pills. I don't know where this kid got the Liao family's spirit-stabilizing pills, but he refined 3 cauldrons of spirit pills for junior brother Chu Fo." Tian Fanlaozu looked at Tianlu Laozu in surprise. All the alchemists under Zhenling's tutelage were under Tianlu Laozu's jurisdiction. Naturally, Tianlu Laozu knew the most about Lu Ping. Tianlu Laozu stroked his beard and nodded with a smile. This kid's talent in alchemy is no less than Xianqin's. Tian Fanlaozu waved his hand and said, "If that's the case, count this kid in as well." In the North Sea Palace of Huanyu Island, a dozen or so cultivators from the 5 major sects of the East Sea gathered in the main hall of the North Sea Palace to discuss something. The North Sea Palace was used by the various sects of Huanyu Island to receive their guests. Normally, it was only used to receive guests of high status. At this time, although there were close to 20 people in the North Sea Palace, the only ones who could participate in the discussion were the mid-Dharma stage cultivator, Laozu, and the 5 late core forging stage cultivators who were sitting cross-legged beside him. The one who was speaking was Zhenren Qin of the Northern Alliance of the East Sea. He was the same Zhenren Qin that Lu Ping had met at the Northern Alliance Elixir Gathering. At this time, Zhenren Qin seemed to be expressing his opinion. From this, although it is hard to tell who is better between the North Sea Zhenling sect and Xianling sect, in terms of second, third, and even fourth generation disciples, Zhenling is undoubtedly better. 2 of its second-generation disciples have already entered the Dharma stage, and at least 2 of them have already condensed a golden elixir of at least the 7th grade and are about to enter the Dharma stage. On the other hand, Xianling sect only has 1 disciple who has entered the Dharma stage. Among the third-generation disciples, this time, the disciples of the 5 major sects of the East Sea and the 10 major sects of the North Sea can see some clues. Xianling sect only won 3 matches, while Zhenling won 4 and drew 1. The other 8 major sects were only lucky enough to win 1 or 2 matches. This was also because we did not want to embarrass the sects of the North Sea too much, so we went easy on them. Therefore, although Zhenling currently does not have much of an advantage, in the long run, Zhenling will definitely surpass Xianling sect and is the most suitable sect to be the leader of the North Sea cultivation world. Therefore, in the opinion of the old man, the East Sea cultivation world should support Zhenling. Immortal Qin's words were reasonable, and the cultivators of the other sects nodded when they heard it. Only Zhang Shiji, the disciple of the Crystal Palace, looked unlucky. Zhang Shiji was unlucky this time. He had won 9 out of 10 matches in the North Sea, but he lost to Jinling's water sword immortal, wiping away all the glory he had before and after. Zhang Shiji originally thought that after this trip to the North Sea, he could change the view of the high-level cultivators of the Crystal Palace. Unexpectedly, he was defeated by Lu Ping in an extremely aggrieved way. Zhang Shiji could already see how he would be ridiculed when he returned to the Crystal Palace. Although Immortal Qin's statement won the approval of most people, not everyone agreed to let Jinling be the leader of the North Sea cultivation world. Immortal Ming Shan of the Crystal Palace opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but after thinking for a long time, he could not think of any reason that could overturn Immortal Qin's words. He could only look at Fa Xiang Laozu, who was sitting at the top. This Fa Xiang Laozu was the leader of the 5 major sects of the East Sea's visit to the North Sea cultivation world. Yuan Guang Laozu of the Crystal Palace. Yuan Guang Laozu smiled and said to Immortal Qin, "What Martial Nephew Qin said is very reasonable, but it is precisely because of this that we cannot support Jinling to be the leader of the North Sea cultivation world." Immortal Qin was a little puzzled, but the other party was Senior Laozu, a cultivator of the giant Crystal Palace of the East Sea, and he was fully responsible for the visit to the North Sea cultivation world. Immortal Qin did not dare to be negligent, and only said respectfully, "Please enlighten me, Laozu." Ancestor Yuan Guang seemed to understand Immortal Qin's thoughts. He said unhurriedly, "The Zhanling sect has been working hard to build up its strength, and the whole sect is united. How can it be controlled by Dong Hai? Xinling sect is declining, but with the help of East Sea, they will definitely compete with Zhanling. In this way, the North Sea cultivation world will not be peaceful, and it will be beneficial for East Sea to rope them in. They will become the vanguard of the various sects of East Sea and become the vanguard against the demon race. This is the most beneficial way for East Sea's cultivation world to deal with it." Immortal Qin was a little puzzled and asked, "But only by resisting the outside world and pacifying the inside world can we resist the demon race. Although the North Sea is weak, it is not dispensable. After all, it is a force against the demon race. If it is consumed in the internal strife, it will not be a good thing for the human race." Yuan Guanglaozu nodded and said, "Martial Nephew Qin has a unique vision, but the old man has lived a few hundred years longer than you. The cultivation world is not as simple as the confrontation between the human race and the demon race. When the time comes, who can say that the human race and the demon race will not join forces? When that time comes, this little bit of power in the North Sea cultivation world will really be dispensable. Don't forget that the so-called North Sea is barren because there are no large amounts of cultivation resources found here, but this does not mean that there are no cultivation resources in the North Sea. Not discovering and not existing are two different things. Don't forget that the North Sea cultivators have now discovered a large spirit vein on an island. Who can guarantee that in the future, there will not be other large spirit veins, or even giant spirit veins and spirit veins in the North Sea? After all, the North Sea cultivation world should be controlled by the East Sea. In the future, if the South Sea cultivation world is controlled, then the prosperity of the entire overseas cultivation world will not be inferior to that of the Central Plains. Yuan Guang Laozu's words made the cultivators of the 5 major sects of East Sea excited. Immortal Qin felt that something was wrong, but he could not find an excuse. At the same time, he was also attracted by the scene described by Yuan Guang Laozu, and began to calculate how the Northern Alliance could get a bigger share of the benefits. As for the rise and fall of the North Sea cultivation world, it was no longer something they considered. Chapter 444. In this part of the world, any heaven and earth spiritual object was originally only used to refine a golden core. But just like the growing soil, a heaven and earth spiritual object, which far exceeded the value of heaven and earth spiritual objects, there were also special existences among the heaven and earth spiritual objects. The wonder dew of myriad wonder was such a special existence amongst the world treasures. The wonder dew of myriad wonder was originally a mid-grade heaven step world spirit water. However, this mid-grade heaven step world spirit water was even more precious than a high-grade heaven step world spirit water. This was not only because the wonder dew of myriad wonder was scarce in this world compared to other world treasures, but also because the wonder dew of myriad wonder had heaven-defying medicinal properties. There were many top longevity pills in the cultivation world. For example, the majority of the 10-year longevity pills required the myriad wonder jade nectar as the main ingredient or the guiding medicine. As the most tyrannical spirit-forging pill in the cultivation world, the myriad wonder jade nectar was an indispensable part of the spirit-forging pill. In the cultivation room on Huangli Island, Lu Ping held a jade slip in his hand. His divine sense repeatedly pondered over the half of the spirit-forging pill recipe in his hand. This half of the recipe was personally given to Lu Ping by Tianlu Furnace Laozu when he went to the pill pavilion to collect the spirit herbs that were specially provided to alchemy grandmasters. Was this what the Xianling sect used to show off to his sect in the North Sea Palace? Who would have thought that it would also fall into his sect's hands now? Unfortunately, there was only half of the recipe. It only recorded the various spirit herbs needed to refine the spirit forging pill, but there was no detailed description of the method to refine the pill. With a flip of his hand, another jade slip appeared in Lu Ping's hand. This jade slip was a pill recipe that Lu Ping obtained in the Qingjian Immortals Cave. This pill recipe was created by Qingjian Laozu thousands of years ago, imitating the Fei Ling sect's spirit forging pill. It was a type of spirit forging pill that was also very effective in improving the gold core, so it was called the minor spirit forging pill. Qingjian Laozu was able to create the minor spirit forging pill, so he must have some understanding of how to refine the spirit forging pill. Lu Ping cross-referenced the contents of the two jade slips, hoping to find some clues about the method to refine the spirit forging pill. However, Lu Ping pondered for a while. Although he had some understanding of the pill refining techniques, he was still confused about the method to refine the spirit forging pill. At this time, Lu Ping had been in seclusion on Huangli Island for nearly 5 years. With a huge amount of spirit stones, spirit veins, pills, and his own unremitting efforts, his cultivation had finally reached the peak of the 4th layer of core forging. Only one step was left before he could break through the bottleneck of the 5th layer. At this time, due to Taoist Gua Xinshan's mountain-moving sea-filling technique, Huangli Island was pulled over from the sea by Taoist Gua. Finally, they merged with Huangli Island, and the area of Huangli Island suddenly reached a radius of more than 30 kilometers. Although Huangli Island was still a distance away from the small islands with a radius of 50 kilometers, the prosperity of Huangli Island had already far surpassed all the small islands under Jinling's jurisdiction. Moreover, with the nourishment of nearly 6 small spirit veins, the entire Huangli Island was like a treasure island in the eyes of the cultivators of Jinling. Currently, Huangli Island had a total of 58 spirit gathering places and nearly 70 acres of spirit farmlands and spirit gardens. There was also a small vein of upper-grade spirit soil and a small vein of mid-grade spirit ore. It could be said that the richness of the entire Huangli Island was comparable to the 36 mid-sized islands under the jurisdiction of Jinling sect. Even some of the poorer mid-sized islands could not compare to Huangli Island. Currently, Huangli Island had become a popular training ground for the disciples of Jinling Side Hall. The spirit fields and gardens on the island would basically be handed over to a new batch of disciples every 2 years. However, among these disciples, there were 2 exceptions. These 2 had been training on Huangli Island for close to 10 years, and they had never given up. Tianyu had planted all of his 8 acres of spirit fields with spirit herbs. After several years on Huangli Island, he had already gotten used to this kind of lifestyle. Tianyu was born timid, and he was unwilling to venture out to hunt demonic beasts like other cultivators. Thus, after advancing to the blood condensation realm, his cultivation was only at the peak of the 2nd layer of the blood condensation realm. However, Tianyu was an expert in managing spirit herbs. It was precisely because the spirit herbs he took care of were growing the best and harvested the most spirit herbs that Taoist Hu Lily specially entrusted him with the 8 acres of spirit herb garden that was closest to Huangli Island's cave abode and had the best effect of gathering spirit herbs. Tianyu was obsessed with the cultivation of spirit herbs. He was also eager to study the growth characteristics and medicinal properties of various spirit herbs. From Master Immortal Fong Tao of Huangli Island, he found a large number of jade slips that recorded the cultivation and medicinal properties of spirit herbs. There were even some simple low-grade pill recipes. The other person was Wang Qi. Unlike Tianyu, who didn't want to leave Huangli Island, Wang Qi often went out with adventurer teams to hunt demonic beasts. His fierce swordsmanship was becoming more and more famous among the cultivators in the same realm as him. His sky-piercing kill cultivation technique had also improved significantly. Coupled with the many fortuitous encounters he had while hunting, he was already a fourth-layer blood condensation realm cultivator. He was already qualified to become a disciple of Zhenling's core forging enlightened master. Compared to Tianyu, Wang Qi wasn't good at managing spirit herbs. Therefore, he requested Taoist Hu Lili to change his spirit herbs to 3 acres of barren spirit herbs that could only be used to grow spirit grains. This way, he wouldn't have to spend too much time taking care of the spirit herbs. Compared to planting spirit herbs, Wang Qi was more willing to put all his energy into cultivating and practicing his swordsmanship. After coming out of seclusion, Hu Lili briefly introduced Huangli Island to Lu Ping. Due to Huangli Island's unique geographical location, as well as Fa Xiang Laozu's presence and the island's impregnable protective array, the number of cultivators entering and leaving Huangli Island had reached 3,000. Among them, there were also 2,000 cultivators who were permanently stationed there. Among them, there were many core forging realm cultivators. As more and more cultivators went overseas to hunt, the harvest naturally increased. In the past 5 years, Hu Lili exchanged the harvest of the cultivators who went out to sea with spirit pills, spirit stones, and dharma treasures at a high price for information about 4 miniature spirit veins. After they were moved to Huangli Island through a traction array, the number of spirit veins on Huangli Island finally reached 6. As for the other 2 miniature spirit veins, they were moved to 2 highlands at the edge of Huangli Island according to Lu Ping's instructions. They opened up 6 cave mansions and rented them to the cultivators who came and went on the island. They were praised by the itinerant cultivators on the island, and Hu Lili also took the opportunity to make a fortune. After understanding the development of Huangli Island in the past few years, Lu Ping originally wanted to pay a visit to Tianlin Laozu and ask him some questions about cultivation. Unexpectedly, as soon as he met Tianlin Laozu, he was sent back to Tianling Mountain by Laozu. Reverend Liang Xianfeng had encountered a problem when he was refining the heavenly wind leaf. This heavenly wind leaf was obtained by Lu Ping with Reverend Liang Xuanfeng's help in the East Sea's Zhongshuan Laozu's cave. However, the quality of this heavenly wind leaf was high enough. It had been condensed for 5,000 years. Although Reverend Liang Xuanfeng's cultivation was superb, he thought that he could only refine half a heavenly wind leaf. Even so, it was more than enough to refine a 7th-grade golden core. The process of refining the heavenly wind leaf was originally smooth sailing. However, after Tianlu Laozu handed Zhenling's spirit-forging pill to Reverend Liang Xianfeng at the last moment, Reverend Liang Xianfeng was suddenly filled with confidence. Back then, he was second only to Jiang Tianlin, Lu Tianling, and Mei Xianqin. Now, these people had all successfully formed a high-grade golden core and successfully entered the Dharma stage. Naturally, Reverend Liang Xianfeng was not satisfied with just forming an ordinary 7th-grade golden core. In the future, he would have to worry about entering the mid-Dharma stage. Therefore, with the help of the spirit-forging pill, Reverend Liang Xianfeng intended to refine the entire heavenly wind leaf. This way, even if he could not form an 8th-grade golden core, his achievements would not be inferior to Xinling sect's Feng Shutao, who had refined 2 sets of low-grade heavenly spirit items. Unexpectedly, although the spirit-forging pill looked complete, Reverend Liang Xianfeng had already secretly extracted a portion of its essence in the name of researching the spirit-forging pill. This was bad news. At the last moment of refining the heavenly wind leaf, Reverend Liang Xuanfeng's spirit-forging pill actually ran out of energy. Seeing that years of hard work was about to be wasted, and the extra half of the heavenly wind leaf was about to be wasted, Reverend Liang Xianfeng could only accept the fate of forming an ordinary 7th-grade golden core like Reverend Guo Xianshan and Reverend Chu Xuanqing. When Tianlu Laozu heard about this, he was furious. The first thing Tianlu Laozu did was to imprison Reverend Liang Xianfeng. However, a portion of the essence of the spirit-forging pill that Reverend Liang Xianshan had stolen had already been used to refine a mid-grade Earth-level heaven and Earth spirit item. In desperation, Tianlu Laozu could only put Reverend Liang Xianfeng under house arrest in the Elixir Pavilion. At the same time, he summoned all the alchemy masters and core forging stage alchemists of the sect to the Elixir Pavilion. At the same time, Tianfan Laozu and Tianjiang Laozu, who were in charge of Tianling Mountain, also came. The three Laozu's presence in the Elixir Pavilion clearly told everyone that they had to save Reverend Liang Xianfeng at all costs. In fact, Reverend Liang Xuanfeng's cultivation and life were not in danger. However, Jinling felt pity for the half of the heavenly wind leaf. That was a treasure that could allow a 9th-level core forging stage cultivator to form a 7th-grade golden core and become a half-step Dharma adept. Unexpectedly, it was destroyed by Reverend Liang Xianfeng using such despicable means. Tianlu Laozu let out a long sigh and said, "What happened to Xianfeng was the fault of the old man. After this matter is over, the old man will receive his punishment from the sect. Now, we need to work together to see how we can complete the last step of refining the heavenly wind leaf so that this half-a-heaven-class spirit object will not become a waste." The dozen or so alchemists in the Pill Pavilion looked at each other in dismay. If it was an Earth-tier origin treasure, they might still have some ideas. But a Heaven-tier origin treasure and an Earth-tier origin treasure weren't even on the same level. The difference between the two was like the difference between heaven and earth, causing everyone to feel helpless. Reverend Xinyue laughed bitterly and said, "Uncle Master, in this situation, I'm afraid there's no other way but to find another spirit-forging pill. Moreover, with Senior Brother Liang's current condition, even if we find a spirit-forging pill for him to consume, I'm afraid that more than half of it will be wasted. After all, Senior Brother Liang is only at the last step. Junior Brother Xuanjing's actions are really sigh." Everyone's faces were filled with resentment. It was obvious that there was nothing they could do. After everyone entered the Elixir Pavilion, Tianfan Laozu had been observing them. He saw that Lu Ping was sitting to the side with a pensive look on his face. Tianfan Laozu directly asked, "Little Lu, do you have any ideas? Regardless of whether it's successful or not, just say it." Tianfan Laozu's words were not without purpose. Everyone in the Elixir Pavilion looked at the youngest alchemist sitting next to Reverend Xuandian in astonishment. Seeing Tianfan Laozu's words, Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "Perhaps this disciple can give it a try." Chapter 445. Enlightened Master Xianjing could be considered a weirdo among the alchemy masters of Zhenling. As one of the 5 alchemy masters of Zhenling, Enlightened Master Xianjing's alchemy skills were only slightly better than Enlightened Master Xiandian's. He had no problem refining a mid-stage core forging pill, but the success rate of refining a late-stage core forging pill was terrible, especially after Enlightened Master Xianjing focused all his attention on the spirit forging pill. His alchemy skills had not improved in the past few years. Originally, he had the idea of keeping the spirit forging pill for himself, but unexpectedly, Fornax Laozu gave the order and the spirit forging pill became Enlightened Master Liang Xuanfeng's. How could Enlightened Master Xianjing accept this? Although Enlightened Master Xianjing had not made any progress in the refinement of the spirit forging pill, he had ingeniously come up with a spirit-attracting secret technique. This secret technique could strip a part of the essence from the pill. Even alchemy masters would not be able to detect the essence of the pill if they did not examine it carefully, let alone other cultivators. Enlightened Master Xianjing had coveted the spirit-forging pill for a long time. How could he be willing to let the delicacy in his hands become someone else's delicacy? Thus, he made up his mind and used the spirit-attracting secret technique on the spirit-forging pill. Originally, Enlightened Master Xianjing was still hoping for a fluke. In his opinion, Liang Xuanfeng's strength was no less than Lu Tianling and the others who had reached the Dharma phase. Although the spirit-forging pill had been stripped of a quarter of its essence by Enlightened Master Xianjing, with the help of the incomplete spirit-forging pill, it should not be a problem for Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng to completely refine the other half of the Tianfeng leaf. At that time, even if Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng found out that there was something wrong with the spirit-forging pill, the sect would not blame him too much for his identity as an alchemy master. However, he did not expect that the sky wind leaf was not as simple as an ordinary sky wind leaf. In order to obtain it, perfected Liang Xianfeng was even severely injured by the cultivators of the Crystal Palace in the East Sea. If Lu Ping had not succeeded in refining the Zhongding pill, perfected Liang Xianfeng would not have been able to condense his gold core. Most of his previous experience was lost due to the injury. With the combination of the two factors, the incomplete spirit-forging pill caused perfected Liang Xianfeng to be stuck at the final moment of forming a top-notch 7th-grade golden core. The reason why Taoist Master Heavenly Furnace did not immediately punish Taoist Xianjing after learning the truth was that Taoist Master Xianjing was his direct disciple and an alchemy grandmaster. Taoist Master Xianjing had used a quarter of the spirit-forging pill's essence to refine a mid-grade earth-step origin treasure and was about to become a late-stage core-forging cultivator. At the very least, Lu Ping had many ideas about this secret technique. But now, the first thing Lu Ping had to do was to rescue perfected Liang Xianfeng from his current strange state and save the other half of the heavenly wind leaf. When Tianfan Laozu and the others heard that Lu Ping actually had a way, their faces lit up with joy. The other alchemy masters had complicated expressions on their faces. The young cultivator in front of them had already brought them too many surprises. Some of the older alchemy masters seemed to see the other amazing alchemy grandmaster Zhenling had met decades ago in this cultivator. At that time, she had also shocked the cultivators in the Pill Pavilion. The only difference was that this cultivator in front of them seemed to be even more outstanding than that perfected Liang Xianfeng. He had saved Taoist Master Xiansan and helped Zhenling make a lot of money in the North Sea with the spiritual water meridian nourishing pill, the blood condensing pill, and the pill furnace that Zhenling had kept a secret in the Pill Pavilion's land of inheritance. For Zhenling, these could be considered as turning the tide. Taoist Master Xianjing's disciple, Taoist Master Tao Xianfeng, was now at the second stage core forging realm and was only one step away from becoming Zhenling's 6th alchemy grandmaster. Originally, Tao Xianfeng was worried about his master Xianjing. If perfected Liang Xianfeng failed to refine the heavenly wind leaf, he would only be able to form an ordinary 7th-grade golden core. He could imagine how his master would be punished by the sect. Therefore, when he heard Lu Ping say that he had a way, he had already suppressed the jealousy in his heart. Instead, he hoped that Lu Ping could really save perfected Liang Xuanfeng's top-grade 7th-grade golden core. This way, his master's punishment would undoubtedly be reduced by a lot. They followed the Fornax Cauldron Grandmaster to a secret place in the pavilion. The Fornax Cauldron Grandmaster turned to look at Lu Ping and asked, "Are you sure you can use the Nachuan Cauldron? Now, it's a magic treasure pill furnace that's worthy of its name." Lu Ping nodded and said, "This is also Disciple's first time refining this kind of pill. If Disciple has the help of a pill furnace, the success rate will undoubtedly be much higher. Even if Disciple can't use the Nachuan Cauldron, it won't be too late to take out the Linchuan Cauldron and use it. It's just that although this kind of pill needs half of the spirit herbs, the Vitality Dew is indispensable, just like the Wonder Jade Dew and the Spirit Forging Pill." Tianlu Laozu smiled and said, "You can rest assured about this. After you handed the formula of the Vitality Dew to Senior Sister Tian Shui in the Snow Mist Palace, the sect has already tried its best to prepare 2 portions of the Vitality Dew for Senior Brother Tian Kong. Now the 3rd portion should be ready soon. It should be enough for you to refine. Senior Brother Tian Kong doesn't need this little time, but now the matter with Xianfeng can't wait." Lu Ping nodded. Then, he saw Fornax Cauldron Great Ancestor clenching his hand into the air, and a portal appeared in front of Lu Ping. The two of them entered the portal one after another, and they found themselves in a blazing world. Lu Ping knew that this should be a place of inheritance of the sect. Sure enough, he heard Tianlu Laozu say, "This is actually the same space as the space where you subdued the mysterious sky spirit fire last time. It's just that because the mysterious sky spirit fire is too strange, it was isolated and placed in a separate space. In this space, there are fire seeds collected by our sect's previous generations of alchemists. Or perhaps when a senior cultivator reached the end of his lifespan, he would place the fire seeds he used in his lifetime in this space for future cultivators." Lu Ping walked with Tianlu Laozu through the inheritance space of the Dam Pavilion. Along the way, they saw several fire seeds floating in front of them. These fire seeds were ordinary spirit beast alchemist fire, heaven and earth fire, and even heaven and earth fire. Lu Ping even saw a cluster of blue fire. If it wasn't the azure spirit fire, then what was it? But after listening to Tianlu Laozu's introduction, Lu Ping was suddenly in awe, but he was puzzled. Since the sect has such a heritage, why do many disciples often waste their time because they can't smelt heaven and earth spiritual objects? Tianlu Laozu looked at Lu Ping and said, "Do you think it's easy for a cultivator to reach the Dharma phase?" Lu Ping didn't know why Tianlu Laozu asked this question, but he still answered, "Of course it's not easy." Tianlu Laozu smiled and said, "With our sect's heritage, if we want to, we can produce 7 or 8 Dharma Laozu in 30 years. Do you believe me?" Lu Ping was tongue-tied and couldn't speak. After a long time, he murmured, "How is that possible?" Tianlu Laozu smiled and said, "Why is it not possible? Not only our sect, but other sects can also produce several Dharma Laozu in times of crisis. Xinling sect has been the #1 sect in the North Sea for many years. Even though it's declining now, I'm afraid their heritage is even stronger than ours. If they want to, it's possible to produce 10 Dharma Laozu in 30 years. There seemed to be a big mystery in Lu Ping's heart. He was about to see the moon, but he still couldn't see it clearly. The Forsaken Cauldron ancestor said, "These so-called treasures are only used when the sect is in a crisis. Once these things are used up, unless they can be exchanged for a greater harvest, the sect will stagnate or even fall apart. Treasures are like the cornerstone of a house. If you dig out the cornerstone to build a house, even if it is magnificent for a time, how can it withstand the wind and rain? If a sect's heritage is gone, it can no longer be called a sect." Lu Ping nodded, not really understanding. Tianlu Laozu continued, "Look at the spirit fire of the world in this inheritance. If it's used up, it's enough for 20 early core forging cultivators to reach mid-core forging cultivators, and 5 or 6 mid-core forging cultivators to reach late-core forging cultivators. This is only the inheritance of the Pill Pavilion. There's also the inheritance of the Artifact Forging Hall, the Puppet Hall, the Heaven Spirit Hall, the Talisman Crafting Pavilion, and the other inheritances of the sect. There are more or less some secrets hidden in them. Once all of these things are taken out, it's enough to change the impoverished state of the entire North Sea for a while. However, these are the heritage that Xinling has accumulated over tens of thousands of years. What right do the disciples have to take the heritage of their predecessors for free?" With that, Tianlu Laozu paused, as if he was waiting for Lu Ping to understand what he was saying. He then continued, "The heritage of a sect still needs to be used for the development of the sect in the end. However, this development must be established on the principle of not harming the sect's heritage. If you want to take the heritage of your predecessors, that's fine, but nothing is given for free. As a member of the sect, you need to contribute something to the sect. Only then will you have the right to take it. If the cultivators of a sect can easily obtain these legacies, then who would spend the effort to find the heavenly resources hidden in the world of cultivation? If a sect has no ambition, then when the heritage of the sect is used up, the sect will not be far from destruction. The sect is the backing of the individual cultivator, but the individual cultivator is the cornerstone of the sect. The growth of a cultivator can bring about a greater foundation for the sect. On the other hand, the growth of the sect will allow the cultivator to achieve greater achievements. The relationship between individual cultivators and the sect has always been one of mutual benefit." Tianlu Laozu's lecture seemed to make Lu Ping understand something. At this time, the two of them had arrived at the center of the inheritance ground. A purple 3-legged cauldron, half the height of a person, was placed in an empty space. This cauldron seemed to exude an invisible aura, as if it wanted to suppress this heavenly grotto. Lu Ping could clearly see that the various flames in this heavenly grotto seemed to be afraid of this cauldron. They only revolved around the cauldron as if they were worshipping it. Tianlu Laozu pointed at the cauldron and said, "This is your Na Chuan cauldron. It is now a magic treasure pill furnace. The longevity pills of senior brother Tian Kong were refined by the old man using this cauldron. Its effect is indeed far superior to ordinary top-grade pill furnaces. Lu Ping reached out his hand towards the body of the Na Chuan cauldron, which was emitting a faint purple light. A low, buzzing sound slowly spread out in all directions, as if it was welcoming the arrival of Lu Ping. Lu Ping was happy in his heart. The Na Chuan cauldron had been refined by Lu Ping in his core space for several years. Tianlu Laozu and Tianjiang Laozu had worked together to upgrade the Na Chuan cauldron into a magic treasure. However, they did not erase the traces of Lu Ping's refinement in the Na Chuan cauldron. Obviously, the two of them had said that when Lu Ping was proficient in using the magic treasure pill furnace, they would return the Na Chuan cauldron to Lu Ping. In fact, the reason why Lu Ping insisted on using the Na Chuan cauldron this time was because he needed a high-grade pill furnace to ensure the success rate of refining the minor forging panacea. In his heart, he was also worried about the gains and losses of the Na Chuan cauldron. Now that he saw the Na Chuan cauldron, he realized that he was a little too suspicious. Tianlu Laozu was old and shrewd. Seeing that Lu Ping was already preparing to refine the minor forging panacea, he said, "You can refine the panacea here now. I will go and see Marshal Nephew Liang first. After you finish refining the panacea, you can enter and exit this cave with your identity nameplate. Now that you are already one of the best alchemy masters in our sect, you still have this power. However, if you want to use the fire seed in this cave, you still have to get the consent of the old man. This secret inheritance place of the Fongdan Pavilion was the most suitable place to refine high-grade panacea, not only because of the surrounding environment, but also because of the rich spiritual qi here. This place was connected to the large spiritual vein of Tianling Mountain. This spiritual vein had been cultivated by generations of cultivators for tens of thousands of years, causing the spiritual qi in this world to be extremely rich. This was also one of the reasons why Lu Ping insisted on coming here to refine panacea. The vast eastern purple qi flame surrounded the Na Chuan cauldron. Lu Ping suddenly realized that the Na Chuan cauldron, which had been promoted to a magic weapon, required more spiritual qi to control than before. This was simply a difficult challenge for other alchemy masters in the middle stage of the core forging realm. However, for Lu Ping, who had merged with the Xinyuan heavy water, it was not a problem. The minor forging panacea was a medicinal pill for people who were half a step into the transcendent stage. Lu Ping had the experience of refining medicinal pills for people who were half a step into the transcendent stage several times before. Therefore, even though it was his first time refining a minor forging panacea, Lu Ping was not unfamiliar with it. However, just in case, Lu Ping still used a method that he had not used for a long time. A piece of ebony was cut into powder. The eastern purple qi flame, which was originally only a middle-grade earth-step medium-grade panacea, flared up. Its power was not inferior to that of a high-grade earth-step medium-grade panacea. With the help of high-grade spirit stones, spirit explosion art, spirit fire forging technique, purple crystal royal jelly, and most importantly, the mystic treasure cauldron, the small forged spirit pellets concoction went smoothly and he successfully refined 5 pellets. However, Lu Ping's true essence was almost depleted. This mystic treasure cauldron was truly not something an ordinary cultivator could handle. Fortunately, this inheritance land was connected to the large spiritual vein of Tianling Mountain. The spiritual qi here was very rich. Lu Ping laid down 36 high-grade spirit stones on the ground to restore the spiritual qi in his body. Unexpectedly, Lu Ping's body suddenly turned into a bottomless abyss that devoured spiritual qi. An invisible vortex of spiritual qi slowly formed with Lu Ping as the center. Lu Ping did not think that the opportunity to break through to the 5th level of core forging realm would come so easily. Chapter 446. Fornax Laozu waited outside the heavenly grotto for 7 days, but Lu Ping did not appear. Fornax Laozu finally realized that something was wrong. No pill would take such a long time to concoct, not to mention that Liang Xuanfeng's situation was getting worse and worse. He was afraid that he would not be able to hold on for much longer. Fornax Laozu had no choice but to enter the land of inheritance again to check on Lu Ping's situation. Fornax Laozu was angry and amused at the same time, as he watched the Lingqi in the entire heavenly grotto constantly fluctuate and converge towards the center of the heavenly grotto. At the center of the heavenly grotto was Lu Ping, who had already entered a meditative state under the Na Chuan cauldron. Was his cultivation about to break through? This guy was really lucky. The rich Lingqi in the land of inheritance was not a place that ordinary cultivators were qualified to cultivate in. Fortunately, Fornax Laozu saw the jade crystal bottle that Lu Ping had placed at his side. Fornax Laozu stretched out his hand, and the jade crystal bottle immediately flew towards Fornax Laozu. A cultivator who could use a magic pill furnace had to be at least at the late stage of core forging. Their alchemy skills also had to be at the peak of the Grandmaster level. He did not expect that this kid could use a magic pill furnace with only a cultivation of the 4th layer of core forging. Fornax Laozu opened the jade crystal bottle and sniffed it. His face suddenly showed a look of surprise. Then, he poured a minor forging spirit pill into his hand. Looking at the round and translucent pill, Fornax Laozu's expression changed. Then, he suddenly had a look of surprise. Finally, after putting the pill into the jade crystal bottle, Fornax Laozu looked deeply at Lu Ping, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground. Then, he quietly opened the door of the heavenly grotto and disappeared. Only Lu Ping, who was in the midst of breaking through, was left in the vast grotto heaven. Because of Lu Ping, the entire grotto heaven was filled with a turbulent atmosphere. A huge amount of spiritual energy was absorbed into his body by the North Sea Wave listening scripture and refined into a dark blue true essence. The true essence fused with Lu Ping's bloodline and flowed into his heart space, settling in the golden core in the center of his heart space. At the same time, strands of divine sense were condensed into the golden core along with the true essence and bloodline essence. As he infused his divine sense into the golden core, a snake's body, crocodile's legs, carp's tail, and a strange Jiao dragon with antlers appeared on the surface of the golden core. This was the 5th strange Jiao dragon that Lu Ping's divine sense had formed on the surface of the golden core. When Lu Ping advanced to the 5th stage of core forging and completely consolidated his cultivation, Lu Ping's closed-door training time in the heavenly grotto exceeded a year. After waking up, Lu Ping looked at the various fire seeds in the grotto heaven that were repelled by the phenomenon of his breakthrough. He couldn't help but find it funny. But then he remembered that the 7 treasures thunder gourd only needed 2 more fire seeds to form a new Bing Huayin thunder. When that time came, he would be able to summon a lightning technique that was not any weaker than a great technique. With this, the 7 treasures thunder gourd had reached the initial success stage. If he wanted to improve it further, he would have to find the 4th spiritual barrier in the gourd, and at the same time, he would have to collect more extraordinary items. However, thinking about what Fornax Laozu had said before, Lu Ping was embarrassed to directly capture the fire seeds in the land of inheritance. After thinking about it, Lu Ping threw out a sound transmission sword. But after a moment, Fornax Laozu's reply came. There were only 2 sentences on the sword. Xinfeng is fine. You can take 2 fire seeds from the land of inheritance. Lu Ping was very clear about Fornax Laozu's meaning. The minor forging spirit pill saved Xuanfeng's hopes of reaching the peak of the 7th grade golden core. The 2 fire seeds of heaven and earth oddities were the reward. With Fornax Laozu's approval, Lu Ping naturally wouldn't be polite. He specifically found 2 fire seeds of heaven and earth oddities and collected them with the 7 thunder gem calabash. Lu Ping believed that after a period of time, with Lu Ping's refinement, the 7 thunder gem calabash would reach small success. Lu Ping would also be able to master the 100 rivers into the sea sword formation. Feeling the increased strength in his body, Lu Ping let out a long sigh. At this moment, the cultivation of his divine sense was no less than that of a 9th stage core forging cultivator. At this time, he even had the confidence to fight a late stage core forging cultivator. Lu Ping took out his identity nameplate from the Jinling sect. After his true essence surged into the nameplate, a blue light suddenly formed a door in the heavenly grotto. Lu Ping walked out of the pill pavilion and saw spiritual master Profound Miao walking towards him from afar. Lu Ping was startled for a moment, then immediately guessed the reason for spiritual master Profound Miao's visit, so he immediately walked in another direction, as if to avoid him. Unexpectedly, the Profound Miao seemed to have predicted Lu Ping's reaction. As soon as he turned around, his arm had already been grabbed by the profound meow. Before Lu Ping could even open his mouth to ask, the profound meow said nothing and directly pulled him toward the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Spiritual Master Profound Meow was only a third-stage core forging cultivator, and he had no hope of advancing to the mid-stage core forging cultivator. As long as Lu Ping was willing, it was impossible for Spiritual Master Profound Meow to capture Lu Ping. However, Spiritual Master Profound Meow was Jinling's second-generation disciple and Lu Ping's martial uncle. In addition, Lu Ping had found several excuses to reject Spiritual Master Profound Meow's proposal. Therefore, Lu Ping could only let Spiritual Master Profound Meow grab his arm and walk toward the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Spiritual Master Profound Meow came personally and almost forcibly captured Lu Ping. Lu Ping also knew that Spiritual Master Profound Meow was here to accept a disciple. In recent years, the number of mid-stage blood condensation cultivators in Jinling had increased to the point that Jinling couldn't accept all of them. Not only did many mid-stage blood condensation cultivators not have a master, even some late-stage blood condensation cultivators had been exploring their own path of cultivation. Although Jinling's sect had a rule that every Taoist master of core forging sect could only take in a maximum of 12 personal disciples, and no more than 24 personal disciples, the truth was that many Taoist masters of core forging sect were very cautious when it came to passing down their legacy. Thus, it was rare for them to take in 12 personal disciples. Due to these two factors, Jinling's annual apprenticeship ceremony was always packed with mid-stage and late-stage blood condensation cultivators, but only a few core forging enlightened masters wanted to accept disciples. This made Spiritual Master Profound Meow, the enlightened master stationed at the Heaven's Spirit Hall, feel pain and happiness at the same time. He was gratified that the growth of the younger generation of Jinling's disciples meant that the sect was growing stronger and stronger. However, his headache was that every time the ceremony was held, Spiritual Master Profound Meow would search for all the core forging cultivators on Tianling Mountain and the various islands. He would forcefully drag these enlightened masters out of their caves to recruit disciples at the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Other than the enlightened masters who used resources to recruit disciples, among the enlightened masters who were invited by Spiritual Master Profound Meow, some of the enlightened masters happened to meet a disciple they fancied, which could be considered as an unexpected gain. There were also some enlightened masters who couldn't stand Spiritual Master Profound Meow's face and could only accept a few in-name disciples. Now, Spiritual Master Profound Meow had become someone that all the core forging cultivators in Jinling had to avoid. Chapter 447. Many of the Jinling cultivators who had just advanced to the core forging stage had not yet recovered from the joy of becoming a Taoist master and becoming a high-level cultivator in the cultivation world. However, they had already discovered that they had already become a master in a muddled manner. According to Lu Ping's knowledge, under the unremitting efforts of Taoist Master Profound Meow, in addition to himself and Yin Xianchu, his good friends, such as Yao Yong, Zhong Jian, Du Feng, Shi Lingling, and Ji Xianxian, had all accepted one or two personal disciples and several in-name disciples. On Huangli Island, Lu Ping had already seen a teenager following behind Chen Liyan. It was said that this teenager was also Chen Liyan's personal disciple. There were also a few disciples who worked as assistants for Jinling as in-name disciples. Even Hu Lily now had 2 personal disciples and several female disciples under her command. After all, Hu Lily was now a core forging stage cultivator and one of the few formation masters in Jinling. Although Lu Ping didn't know why Yin Xianchu didn't accept disciples, Lu Ping had been hiding from Taoist Master Profound Meow for several years. In the past, Taoist Master Xian Yuan and Taoist Master Profound Meow worked together to send 7 blood-refining stage disciples who had watched him practice swordsmanship to Huangli Island to gain experience for several years. However, Lu Ping stubbornly kept these 7 disciples on Huangli Island for nearly 10 years. In the end, 5 of the 7 disciples left, leaving only Wang Qi and Tianyu. However, neither of them caught Lu Ping's attention. In essence, Lu Ping was a lazy person who was afraid of trouble. How could he have the mood to think about teaching disciples? However, Taoist Master Profound Miao didn't see it that way. In his opinion, Lu Ping's swordsmanship and alchemy were the two peerless talents among Jinling's core forging stage cultivators. How could such an amazing cultivator not leave behind his own inheritance? Therefore, even though Lu Ping used all kinds of excuses to evade Taoist Master Profound Miao, Taoist Master Profound Miao never got tired of it. Almost every time the apprenticeship ceremony came, Taoist Master Profound Miao would send an invitation card to Taoist Master Profound Miao. No one knew where Taoist Master Profound Miao got the news that Lu Ping was in the Pill Pavilion's land of inheritance, but he personally came to the Pill Pavilion to capture Lu Ping. On the way to the Pill Pavilion, Lu Ping had already figured out this matter. The fact that Lu Ping was in seclusion in the Pill Pavilion was only known by his sex Laozu and a few of the Pill Pavilion's alchemy masters. The alchemy masters would never reveal the location of the inheritance to Taoist Master Profound Miao. Thus, for Taoist Master Profound Miao to appear in front of him so accurately the moment Lu Ping came out of the inheritance, it was obvious that he was instructed by Fornax Laozu. It seemed that the matter of Jinling's mid and late blood condensation disciples had reached an extremely serious stage. It had even attracted the attention of Taoist Master Profound Miao. Currently, Jinling's second-generation disciples were no longer accepting disciples. Taoist Master Profound Miao was like this. Although the second-generation disciples had different levels of cultivation, whether it was personal disciples or nominal disciples, they had already accepted dozens of disciples. Currently, none of Jinling's third-generation disciples were able to cross the threshold of late core forging. However, the growth of the third-generation disciples had already become the main body of Jinling. They were the main high-level cultivators that Jinling recruited. Lu Ping followed Taoist Master Profound Miao all the way to the Heaven Spirit Hall. At this time, there were already dozens of mid and late blood condensation disciples gathered in front of the hall. Lu Ping's current prestige in Jinling was unparalleled. Ever since Lu Ping defeated the Eastern Sea's Crystal Palace's disciple, Zhang Shiji, in an unimaginable manner 6 years ago, his reputation in Jinling had almost reached its peak. Even some of Jinling's late core forging second-generation disciples could only look up to him. His ranking in the North Sea rookie list had already reached the top 10, and he was ranked 7th on the rookie list. He was only below a few 6th-layer core forging cultivators. Among the low-level cultivators in Jinling, how many didn't know who Lu Xinping was? Therefore, when they saw Lu Ping follow Taoist Master Profound Miao into the Heaven Spirit Hall, they finally realized something. The Water Sword Immortal, who had never accepted a disciple, was invited to the Heaven Spirit Hall by Taoist Master Profound Miao on the eve of the apprenticeship ceremony. Could it be that Taoist Master Lu Xinping was going to accept a disciple this time? Up until now, Lu Ping was the only mid-core forging cultivator in Jinling who didn't have a disciple. Coupled with Lu Ping's legendary experience and shocking strength in the North Sea, he had long since become the ideal disciple candidate among the blood condensation cultivators in Jinling. Unfortunately, Lu Ping never had any intentions of accepting a disciple. Although many high-level cultivators had tried to find out if Lu Ping had any intentions of accepting a disciple, and many cultivators had even taken the opportunity to introduce their juniors to Lu Ping had never relented on the matter of accepting a disciple. This made Huangli Island's Hearing Wave Manor the most difficult place for Jinling's disciples to accept a disciple. However, at this time, the disciples of Jinling suddenly realized that the Water Sword Immortal was about to accept a disciple. The sound-transmitting swords in front of the Heaven Spirit Hall began to fly everywhere. In just half a day, the entire Jinling, including the mid-blood condensation cultivators who were stationed at the edge of the island and had yet to accept a master, and the disciples of the clans under Jinling's jurisdiction who had reached the standard but had yet to accept a master, all of them rushed to Heaven Spirit Mountain. When enlightened Master Profound Miao came out of the Heaven Spirit Hall, he was shocked by the scene in front of him. There were already more than 300 mid and late blood condensation cultivators waiting for the ceremony. Although enlightened Master Profound Miao was a core forging cultivator and was immune to all diseases, he still felt dizzy when he saw such a scene. After enlightened Master Profound Miao understood the situation in front of the Heaven Spirit Hall, He immediately returned to the hall and reported the situation to Lu Ping. Lu Ping was also dumbfounded. He didn't think that this would happen. Enlightened Master Profound Miao chuckled. Even if you don't want to accept a disciple this time, it's impossible. Otherwise, how are you going to give an explanation to these hundreds of disciples? Lu Ping couldn't help but smile bitterly. Disciple originally wanted to talk about accepting a disciple in the future, but it was you who dragged me here. Now that such a big scene has happened, who can I blame? Enlightened Master Profound Miao snickered. I don't care. Most of these cultivators are here for your name. You have to know that you are the flag of our sect in the cultivation world of the North Sea. Today's matter has probably alerted the Lao Tzu of our sect. If you don't handle it well, your great reputation among the low-level cultivators of our sect will be ruined. As soon as Enlightened Master Profound Miao finished speaking, Enlightened Master Guo Xianshan and Enlightened Master Xian Shu walked into the Heaven's Spirit Hall sternly. Seeing Lu Ping's bitter smile, Enlightened Master Guo directly asked, "How do you plan on handling today's matter?" Lu Ping just shrugged and said, "Disciple was dragged here by Enlightened Master Profound Miao today. I originally didn't want to accept a few disciples. If worst comes to worst, I'll just say that I've come to observe the ceremony and not accept a single one. Also, Enlightened Master Profound Miao didn't spread the news of me accepting a disciple in the sect. The disciples outside are just groundless rumors." Enlightened Master Profound Miao could not help but smile bitterly when he saw Lu Ping's shameless behavior. He had indeed been a little reckless in this matter. Although he had done it out of good intentions, he had forgotten about Lu Ping's great reputation among the disciples of the sect. He was now stuck between a rock and a hard place. Nonsense. Although Enlightened Master Guo Xuanshan's face darkened, before he could reprimand Enlightened Master Profound Miao, a voice rang out in the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Lu Ping recognized the voice as one of the three mid-Dharma adepts of the sect, Lao Tzu, Tian Fan Lao Tzu. A green door suddenly appeared in the middle of the Heaven's Spirit Hall, and Tian Fan Lao Tzu stepped into the hall with a solemn face. Lu Ping hurriedly bowed along with Enlightened Master Guo Xianshan and the others. Tian Fan Lao Tzu looked at Lu Ping and said coldly, "You're the one who always makes people worry. Not long ago, you solved Xuanfeng's big problem, and now you've taken out such a brilliant elixir like the minor forging spirit pill. The old man was still thinking of how to reward you, but you've just come out of seclusion and caused such a big mess. And you still want to wash your hands of this? Do you still have any sense of responsibility towards this sect?" Lu Ping laughed bitterly and did not say anything. He did not think that he would really alarm Lao Tzu of the sect, and it was the strongest Lao Tzu of the sect. Tian Fan Lao Tzu saw that although Lu Ping's expression was respectful, there was still some disapproval in his heart. In a low voice, he said, "The success of our sect today is due to the unity of everyone in the sect. We've gathered everyone's strength together. Low-level adepts support high-level adepts, and high-level adepts protect low-level adepts. This is why we're so prosperous, far surpassing the other 9 sections. You, Lu Xianping, may only be a third-generation disciple, but your current achievements have already placed you in the core decision-making group of the sect. Your status in the sect has even exceeded that of a normal late core forging cultivator, yet you still treat yourself as a normal disciple of the sect. You live a carefree life, and when there's a problem, you try to get the seniors of the sect to deal with it. How is that possible? If they could deal with it, why would the old man come to the Heaven's Spirit Hall?" After Tian Fan Lao Tzu arrived at the Heaven's Spirit Hall, he did not even look at anyone else. Instead, he lectured Lu Ping. Not only did this exceed Lu Ping's expectations, it even exceeded the expectations of all the core forging cultivators in the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Even Lu Ping and Spiritual Master Guo Xianshan and the others did not think that their sect's Lao Tzu had already placed Lu Ping at such a high level. Although Spiritual Master Guo Xianshan and the others previously valued Lu Ping and even admired Lu Ping's achievements, they still treated Lu Ping as a junior in the end. They would usually take care of Lu Ping. Only today, after hearing Tian Fan Lao Tzu's words, did everyone realize that the disciple before them had achieved a series of achievements for the sect. His status in the sect was no less than Spiritual Master Xinshu, Spiritual Master Shinsen, and the other late core forging cultivators. He was even comparable to Liang Xianfeng, Chu Xuanqing, and the other half-step Dharma adepts. For a moment, everyone in the Heaven's Spirit Hall had a variety of expressions. After Tian Fan Laozu finished speaking, he took 2 steps out of the Heaven's Spirit Hall, as if he was thinking of something. Lu Ping was slightly flattered. He had not yet recovered from Tian Fan Laozu's lecture. Spiritual Master Guan nodded, as if he agreed with Tian Fan Laozu's point of view. Spiritual Master Xianshu did not say a word from beginning to end, but his eyes seemed to be thinking of something. Spiritual Master Xuanmiao was a little surprised, but then he shook his head, as if he was feeling inferior. At this moment, more and more cultivators gathered outside the Heaven's Spirit Hall. It was no longer limited to the cultivators who had come to take on a disciple. There were even more cultivators who had come to watch the ceremony, almost reaching 500 people. The other core forging cultivators on Heaven's Spirit Mountain also seemed to have noticed what was happening. Strands of soul would fly over from time to check on the situation. Only after a long while did Lu Ping's eyes clear up. Although Tian Fan Laozu was looking outside, he seemed to be paying attention to Lu Ping at all times. Seeing Lu Ping let out a long sigh of relief, he asked, "Have you thought it through?" Lu Ping nodded solemnly. "Yes, disciple has thought it through." "Oh?" Tian Fan Laozu turned around and glanced at Lu Ping with some interest. He said, "Then tell me, how do you plan on dealing with this?" Everyone's faces lit up. They looked toward Lu Ping, and at the same time, they wondered what method Lu Ping would use to deal with the cultivators who had gathered in front of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Lu Ping smiled. "This time, disciple did not reveal the news of me accepting a disciple, so disciple naturally will not accept a disciple during the ceremony." Spiritual Master Profound Miao's face collapsed when he heard what Lu Ping had said. Unexpectedly, Lu Ping continued, "However, Senior Profound Miao has told me that our sect has been flourishing in the past few years. A large number of disciples who have reached the mid and late blood condensation realm have never had the opportunity to become a disciple of our sect. They can only explore and cultivate on their own, which has greatly slowed down their cultivation speed. As a result, disciple wishes to hold a 7-day lecture after the ceremony in the Heaven's Spirit Hall, so that I can share some of my insights and experiences with those who have yet to become a disciple with a master. At the same time, I also wish for even more high-level cultivators of our sect to lecture in front of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. It would be best if it becomes a custom. That way, not only will the cultivation speed of those who have yet to become a disciple not be affected by the lack of guidance from a master, it will also alleviate the pressure on the high-level cultivators of our sect to accept disciples due to the rapid growth of the younger generation. That way, it will also alleviate the dissatisfaction towards the sect from the low-level cultivators being unable to become a disciple of our sect. It will be beneficial for the strength of our sect. Tian Fan Laozu was rather satisfied with Lu Ping's words. Spiritual Master Guo Xianshan and Spiritual Master Xian Shu also nodded their heads to one side. Of course, the happiest person was the Spiritual Master Profound Miao. Ever since he had become a Spiritual Master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall, he had basically run his legs off every year when it came to accepting disciples. Only now did he let out a breath of relief after hearing Lu Ping's suggestion. Although a portion of the cultivators were disappointed when the Spiritual Master Profound Miao announced that the Water Sword Immortal would be lecturing for 7 days after the ceremony, there were even more cultivators who were extremely excited. This was because everyone knew that it was impossible for all the cultivators gathered in the Heaven's Spirit Hall to become a disciple of Spiritual Master Lu Xianping. Since that was the case, being able to listen to Spiritual Master Lu Xuanping's lecture for 7 days was not bad either. Chapter 448. Even though they knew that Lu Ping would be preaching for 7 days after the ceremony, Lu Ping did not plan on accepting any disciples, which greatly disappointed the several hundred Jinling disciples who had hurried over. Even though that was the case, there were still several dozen disciples who put in their best efforts during the ceremony, hoping to gain the recognition of Spiritual Master Lu Xianping so that he would change his mind and accept them as a disciple. However, to everyone's disappointment, Lu Ping only smiled as he sat in the Heaven's Spirit Hall, and watched the performance of the many disciples. He did not mention the matter of accepting disciples at all. However, because Lu Ping did not plan on accepting disciples, only 80 or 90 of the several hundred disciples who had hurried over decided to participate in the ceremony. However, their hard work had unexpectedly gained the recognition of a few core forging adepts. Quite a few adepts who had not planned on accepting disciples changed their minds and accepted one or two that they valued. Quite a few adepts who only wanted to accept a single disciple struggled to choose between 2 or 3. In the end, they all accepted under Spiritual Master Profound Miao's instigation. Out of the 80 to 90 disciples who participated in the apprenticeship ceremony, 60 to 70 of them were apprenticed to the sect's spiritual master. Although most of them could only be registered disciples, for Spiritual Master Profound Miao, this year's apprenticeship ceremony could be considered a complete success. Wang Qi, Feng Wei, and Feng Xia had already heard that Spiritual Master Lu Xianping would be attending the ceremony 3 days later because they had gone out to hunt. When the three of them hurried over to the Heaven's Spirit Mountain, the ceremony was already nearing its end. Fortunately, Spiritual Master Lu Xianping did not accept disciples during the ceremony and would instead preach for 7 days after the ceremony. The three of them only let out a sigh of relief. Tianyu had hurried over as well. Although his cultivation had not reached the level where Zhenling could accept a master, he had always been on Huangli Island. He had learned from Feng Tao that Spiritual Master Lu Xianping was going to preach at the Heaven's Spirit Hall, so he had hurried over as well. Wang Qi looked around and quickly found the other 5 people who had trained on Huangli Island with him. They were all at the mid-blood condensation realm and were somewhat famous sword cultivators among their peers. When they heard that Spiritual Master Lu Xianping would be attending the ceremony, they had hurried over just like Wang Qi. They were now waiting for Spiritual Master Lu Xuanping's 7 days of preaching. The first 2 days of Lu Ping's 7-day lecture were mainly about cultivation. Lu Ping's main focus was the water elemental cultivation method, but he didn't just focus on the North Sea Wave listening scripture. Instead, he studied the many water elemental cultivation methods in Zhenling's sect scripture library and compared them with his own cultivation methods. Adding to the fact that Lu Ping had fought many different opponents over the years, his knowledge had broadened and he had his own insights on cultivation. The 2 days of Lu Ping's lecture not only satisfied the blood condensation realm cultivators, but also gave Lu Ping the opportunity to sort out his own knowledge. Under his careful study, a cultivation system suitable for himself began to take shape. The 3rd and 4th days were about the way of the sword. This was the content that Zhenling cultivators were most excited about. Lu Ping's swordsmanship was renowned among cultivators of the same level. He was even given the title of the Water Sword Immortal. Many cultivators who wanted to become disciples of Lu Ping came because of Lu Ping's swordsmanship. In fact, Lu Ping was not a pure sword cultivator. Sword techniques were just a common means to him. Although the 6 sword techniques he mainly practiced in the North Sea's 12 righteous arts were all top-notch sword techniques in the cultivation world, and as Lu Ping's cultivation and status increased, he came into contact with more and more things in the cultivation world. His understanding of sword techniques deepened as well. The sword techniques he learned were no longer limited to the 6 or 7 sword techniques he learned in the past, nor were they limited to the water element sword techniques. As a result, the number of cultivators who came to Heaven's Spirit Hall reached its peak during the 2 days Lu Ping was teaching. There were close to 1,000 Zhenling sect cultivators who came to listen to Lu Ping's lecture. Moreover, there weren't only blood condensation realm disciples among the audience. There were also many core forging realm cultivators on Tianling Mountain who were listening through the Dao Art Assembly. Lu Ping ignored them and focused on his lecture. On the 5th and 6th day, Lu Ping's lecture changed to the Tao of Alchemy Cauldron again. This time, the number of cultivators who could understand his lecture was much lower. However, a considerable number of cultivators who stayed to listen were either alchemists from the sect or aspiring to become alchemists. Who was Lu Ping? He was one of the only 5 pill refiners in the sect. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was the number 1 pill refiner under Fornax Laozu. Although there weren't many cultivators who came to listen to the lecture, there were many core forging cultivators among them. Although these cultivators had reached the required cultivation level, they couldn't cross the threshold to become a pill refiner master. In front of a master like Lu Ping, They were completely juniors. Lu Ping even saw Tao Xinfeng among the crowd. At this time, Tao Xinfeng was no longer as arrogant as he was in the early days, especially after Taoist Master Xinjing used the spirit-stealing technique to steal a quarter of the essence of the spirit-forging pill, causing Taoist Master Liang Xinfeng to almost fail in condensing his golden core. If it wasn't for Lu Ping's minor spirit-forging pill that saved Taoist Master Liang Xinfeng from the edge of condensing his golden core, Taoist Master Xinjing wouldn't be able to pass this hurdle. After Lu Ping successfully refined the minor spirit-forging pill, Fornax Laozu had listed it as a top secret of Zhenling. The effect of the minor spirit-forging pill was far less than that of the spirit-forging pill. During the process of smelting the heavenly wind leaf, Taoist Master Liang Xinfeng had used 3 minor spirit-forging pills to make up for the loss of a quarter of the essence of the spirit-forging pill. Taoist Master Liang Xinfeng only had 3 chances to use the minor spirit-forging pill. Therefore, for any late-stage core forging cultivator, taking the minor spirit-forging pill was far from enough to raise the rank of their golden core. However, although the minor forging spirit pills had little effect on late gold core stage cultivators, it was still a precious treasure for cultivators who were smelting heaven and earth spirit treasures for the first and second time. It could be said that if Taoist Master Xinjing had 3 minor forging spirit pills in his hands, he wouldn't need to painstakingly create a soul-stealing technique to steal the essence of a spirit-forging pill. He could completely smelt a mid-grade earth-step spirit treasure into his gold core and smoothly advance to the late core forging stage. On the last day, Lu Ping didn't preach the Tao. Instead, he allowed the audience to ask questions. Lu Ping answered in front of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Unexpectedly, all the Zhenling disciples were speechless. They didn't have the courage to stand up and ask a core forging cultivator a question in front of everyone. For a moment, the atmosphere in front of the Heaven's Spirit Hall was very awkward. In the end, some of the cultivators who came to listen to Lu Ping's Tao of Pill Cauldrons asked questions. Only then did Lu Ping avoid this awkward situation. Although these alchemists were only ordinary alchemists, their cultivation had reached the core forging stage. Their seniority in the sect was even higher than Lu Ping's. Naturally, Lu Ping didn't dare to put on airs of giving pointers. Instead, he discussed the Tao with each other. Unexpectedly, after answering a question from one alchemist, another alchemist immediately asked Lu Ping a question. As a result, more and more alchemists participated. What was originally a Tao preaching session became a Zhenling core forging cultivators Tao discussion. Later on, more and more cultivators participated. The cultivators who asked questions were no longer limited to alchemists. Many core forging cultivators who came to listen with their spiritual sense also appeared. Many core forging cultivators discussed and verified with each other. The content of the discussion became more and more extensive. On the contrary, Lu Ping was no longer the main character of the session. The disciples in front of the Heaven's Spirit Hall didn't think that things would develop like this. Although it was no longer enlightened Master Lu Xuanping's session, it was still the first time the Zhenling disciples had seen so many core forging cultivators gather together. The content of the discussion was extensive and soon, the blood condensation disciples were attracted. In the end, the hundreds of disciples in front of the Heaven's Spirit Hall were divided into groups according to their preferences. They gathered around the enlightened masters and listened to them talk about the Tao. It was a different story. Originally, Lu Ping's Tao preaching session was supposed to end on the 7th day. However, no one expected such an incident to occur. More and more Zhenling core forging cultivators participated. After a full 3 days, this unexpected Tao preaching session was ended by Tian Fan Laozu's personal intervention. However, Tian Fan Laozu ordered that after the Zhenling disciple ceremony, there would be a 6-day Tao preaching session for core forging cultivators. It was mainly targeted at blood condensation cultivators. After the preaching session, there would be a Tao preaching session for 3 days. It was mainly targeted at core forging cultivators, but blood condensation cultivators were also allowed to listen. The session would last for a total of 9 days. Lu Ping didn't think that his unintentional action would create a tradition of Zhenling. However, at this moment, Lu Ping wasn't interested in these things. After the Tao preaching session, Lu Ping originally wanted to visit second senior sister, Li Xuanru. However, from second senior sister's disciple, he found out that second senior sister had left Tianling Mountain under the orders of master for many years. Not only second senior sister, third senior sister Zhao Xuanji and fourth senior sister Wang Xianjing had also left Tianling Mountain. They hadn't returned to Tianling Mountain for many years. Without any other choice, Lu Ping could only return to Huangli Island alone. However, just as Lu Ping stepped onto the teleportation array to Huangli Island, a golden light shot straight towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping frowned and grabbed the light in his hand. It was a golden sound transmission magic sword. Lu Ping scanned it with his divine sense, and his expression changed. He quickly flew towards Qi Mei Mansion at the top of Tianling Mountain. This was Tian Fan Laozu and Tian Shui Laozu's residence. When Lu Ping arrived, the three Laozus, Tian Fan, Tian Jiang, and Tian Lu had already arrived. Below them stood Taoist Guo Xianshan, Taoist Xian Shu, and a dozen other late-stage core forging cultivators who had stayed behind to guard Tianling Mountain. Seeing Lu Ping enter, many late-stage core forging cultivators were surprised, but they didn't say anything. Guo Xianshan and Taoist Xian Shu both had heavy expressions on their faces. Lu Ping's heart thumped. It seemed that something big had happened. Sure enough, Tian Fan Laozu's expression was solemn. The moment he opened his mouth, everyone standing in the palace jumped in fright. I called everyone here to inform everyone of a grievous news. Martial nephew Xian Shu has come to report that martial nephew Li Xuanin's soul lamp suddenly extinguished. It was like a bolt from the blue. Qi Mei Palace suddenly became silent. However, the atmosphere inside the palace was terrifyingly quiet. It was as if Qi Mei Palace had turned into a jar of oil that would explode at any time. Chapter 449. After Lu Ping left Qi Mei Palace, he directly returned to Huangli Island. After thinking for a while, Lu Ping directly sent a few sound transmission magic swords out of the island. After thinking about it, the news of Taoist Li Xuanin's death couldn't be hidden for long. It wouldn't be long before the entire North Sea's cultivation world received the news. Thus, he called Chen Lian over and gave him some instructions. After that, Chen Lian left Huangli Island with a solemn expression. Just as Lu Ping was about to give some instructions to Hu Lili, he heard Jiang Tianlin Laozu's voice, ordering Lu Ping to meet him. Lu Ping knew that the news of Taoist Li Xuanin's death was most likely already known by Tianlin Laozu. As expected, after seeing Lu Ping, Tianlin Laozu said with a gloomy expression, "I already know about Taoist Li Xuanin's death. Just now, Martial Aunt Tian Shui sent news from Huanyu Island. Xianling sect's Daoshi Laozu returned with serious injuries. He claimed that he was ambushed by junior brother Daoshi and the demon race cultivator Aou. During the battle, Aou suddenly switched sides and heavily injured Daoshi Laozu. Daoshi Laozu took the opportunity to escape. I don't know what happened after that, but it seems like junior brother Daoshi Laozu was killed by the demon cultivator Aou. When Lu Ping heard the name Aou, he was clearly stunned. Previously, when Lu Ping had Daguai infiltrate the demon race, he had heard the name Aou. At that time, it seemed that the East Sea demon race had sent over an important item. In the end, the North Sea demon race decided to give this item to Aou. Lu Ping had even reported this matter to the sect. Lu Ping's mind churned as he thought of the mysterious middle-aged cultivator he saw outside the Clear Stream cave abode. Could that person be Aou? But in this way, didn't it mean that the Black Yin Taoist's wife was once a demon cultivator? If Yin Xianchu was the Black Yin Taoist's son, didn't that mean that Yin Xianchu was the descendant of a human and a demon? Lu Ping felt dizzy, but his thinking didn't seem to be affected. On the contrary, it seemed to be running faster, and one speculation after another appeared in Lu Ping's mind. That day, Aou addressed Black Yin sect master as brother-in-law. Obviously, Aou's sister was Black Yin sect master's former wife. Moreover, Black Yin sect master's demon wife must have died. That day, Aou provoked Black Yin sect master with revenge. Clearly, Black Yin sect master's wife was killed by someone. And from the current situation, This enemy was very likely Xianling sect's Dao Shi Laozu. The reason why Master Mysterious Yin had endured for so many years, other than Dao Shi Laozu's tyrannical strength as Dharma idol Laozu, it was also because of his wife's identity as a demon. The human and demon races had been opposing each other since ancient times, but Black Yin sect master had created this kind of relationship between a human and a demon. This was more or less a taboo in the cultivation world. When the time came, it would be difficult for Zhenling to stand up for him. Everything was deduced in Lu Ping's mind, but the doubts in his heart grew. Since Black Yin sect master and AOU had joined forces to sneak attack Dao Shi Laozu, why did AOU turn against them after they succeeded? Was Dao Shi Laozu lying, or did something else happen? Black Yin sect master had joined forces with a demon cultivator to sneak attack Xianling sect's Laozu. How big of a storm would this cause in the North Sea's cultivation world? Would Xianling sect take advantage of the situation to incite the North Sea's cultivators and magnify this matter into a collusion between Xinling and the demon race? Would they join forces with the North Sea's cultivation world to suppress Xinling? Also, did his good friend Yin Xianchu know the truth of the matter? And what kind of impact would this matter have on him? Lu Ping was frightened. Previously, he was worried that Yin Xianchu would go out to seek revenge because of Black Yin sect master's death. Thus, he had sent a sound transmission sword to a few of his good friends, asking them to take care of Yin Xianchu. He had even sent Chunlian to personally make a trip. However, if Yin Xuanchu's identity as a descendant of the human and demon races was exposed, he would immediately become the target of the entire cultivation world. At that time, in order to not be passive in the cultivation world, Zhenling would most likely sacrifice Yin Xianchu. If Lu Ping's speculation was true, then his good friend's good intentions of taking care of Yin Xianchu would instead backfire. Lu Ping's heart was burning, and an anxious expression inadvertently appeared on his face. Tianlin Laozu suddenly asked, "Did you think of something?" Startled, Lu Ping hurriedly suppressed the thoughts in his heart. After thinking for a while, he asked, "Is what Xianling sect's Dao Shi Laozu said true? Will Xianling sect take the opportunity to attack our sect in the North Sea cultivation world?" Tianlin Laozu smiled in relief, but still said solemnly, as a Dharma phase cultivator, Dao Shi wouldn't go so far as to lie about this matter. I'm afraid Xianling sect will also come to our sect for an explanation. However, Xianling sect can't do anything to us now. At present, other than the late core forging cultivators who are in charge of guarding the place, the other late core forging cultivators in Tianling Mountain have all gone out to the sea to search for junior brother Xianyin's corpse. At the same time, they are also tracking AOU's traces. Our sect will definitely not let this matter go. Our sect will definitely avenge junior brother Xianyin's death. And no matter what the truth is, no matter who is involved, and no matter which force is involved, in the North Sea cultivation world, anyone who dares to plot against our sect like this will have to pay the price. Lu Ping's blood was boiling after hearing Tianlin Laozu's seemingly unreasonable words of protection. This was the embodiment of a sect's cohesiveness and cohesiveness. It often manifested in the unreasonableness of a sect when they were united against outsiders. Lu Ping tried his best to calm himself down and asked Tianlin Laozu, "Grandmaster, what is the relationship between AOU and junior brother Xianyin?" Tianlin Laozu looked at Lu Ping and said, "Don't worry about this for now. You are about to head out to the sea that Dao Shi mentioned. I know that you have a few accomplished demon pets, and when the time comes, you will need to borrow your demon pets to track AOU under the obstruction of the demon clan. Right now, the few Laozu of our sect have all headed out to the open sea to confront the Dharma power of the demon clan, Laozu, and have no time to attend to other matters. After AOU ambushed junior brother Xianyin, in order to avoid being hunted down by our sect, he will definitely head to the deep sea to hide in the demon territory. That is the base camp of the demon clan. You and the others must intercept AOU before he escapes back to the deep sea demon territory. Otherwise, if AOU escapes back, when he enters the Dharma stage, it will be even more difficult to avenge junior brother Xianyin." Lu Ping hesitated for a while, but still retreated from Tianlin Laozu's cave. Tianlin Laozu's gaze was deep, and rays of light shone from his eyes. Then, he suddenly disappeared from the cave. When Lu Ping left the cave, he hurriedly found Hu Lili and Zheng Jia and told them the gist of the matter. Ignoring their gasps of surprise, he said anxiously, "I didn't think too much about it before, but now it seems that junior brother Xian Chu's identity as a demon clan bloodline can't be concealed. When the time comes, it will be fine if the sect protects junior brother Xian Chu, but if things don't go well, and someone wants to harm junior brother Xian Chu, I'm afraid that even the elders of our sect will not be able to directly intervene. When the time comes, it will be up to us, who are friends." Zhang Jia patted Lu Ping's shoulder and said with the spirit of brotherhood, "Don't worry, I know what to do." Ever since Lu Ping's cultivation rose higher and higher, his status within the sect became more and more prominent. Cultivators of the same level as Lu Ping became more and more respectful towards him. Even among his own good friends, there were few like Zheng Jia, who dared to pat Lu Ping's shoulder and speak in a carefree manner. However, this feeling made Lu Ping feel very gratified. Lu Ping nodded and said, "There are many complicated matters on Huangli Island. I will still need senior sister Hu to stay here and look after junior brother Xian Chu. As for junior brother Xian Chu, I will need senior sister Zhang to go over and tell the others about my intentions. If the situation turns bad, you must protect junior brother Xian Chu's life." After sending Zhang Jia off, Lu Ping thought for a moment and still felt uneasy. So, he left the House of Gold for Hu Lili and said, "This time, the commotion is not small. There is an 80 to 90% chance that Grandmaster Tian Lin will leave Huangli Island to confront the demon race's Lao Zu. If that happens, the guards on Huangli Island will definitely be empty. Luan Yu and Lu Qiner will be in the House of Gold. If anything happens, the two of them will be your strong support. At the same time, Huangli Island's Grand Protective Array must be activated at all times." Hu Lili also knew the severity of the situation. She said in a deep voice, "Don't worry. Huangli Island is your blood, sweat, and tears. I will definitely protect it with my life." Moreover, the number of spiritual veins on Huangli Island has increased to 6, which will support the activation of the Grand Protective Array. There will no longer be a lack of spiritual energy. Furthermore, Wan Yu and Lu Qiner's cultivation base is above mine. In this way, even if Chen Lian and Zheng Jia are not on the island, I can still protect Huangli Island. Seeing Hu Lili's solemn expression, Lu Ping smiled and said, "There is no need to be so serious. Save the people and lose the land. Both the people and the land will survive. There is no reason for you to disregard your life just because of this island. So what if you lose it? If I can conquer Huangli Island once, I can do it a second time and a third time." After bidding farewell to Hu Lili, Lu Ping left Huangli Island. Just as he was about to rush towards the place where Xianling sect's Dao Shi Laozu was ambushed, a bold idea suddenly appeared in his mind. He turned around and flew towards the direction of the Clear Stream Cave. In the depths of the sea where the Clear Stream Cave was located, a bright pearl the size of a wicker basket was suspended above Lu Ping's head. It allowed Lu Ping to almost double his speed in the sea. One must know that Lu Ping specialized in the North Sea Wave listening spell. He was best at flying in the water. Compared to the water spirits like the green sea snakes, he was only slightly slower. However, when Lu Ping summoned the water moon repelling pearl above his head, his speed had already far surpassed the 3 green sea snakes. Outside the Clear Stream Cave was the place where Lu Ping had found the mysterious Yin Master and the middle-aged cultivator who was suspected to be Aou. Lu Ping first used his divine sense to cover a radius of 8 to 9 miles of the sea. After finding nothing, Lu Ping came to a corner of an underwater valley that was overgrown with seaweed. Lu Ping used the water manipulation spell. The seaweed in the corner and the seaweed on the ground seemed to be imprisoned. They slowly floated upwards, revealing a small teleportation array hidden underneath. This was the teleportation array that Lu Ping had used to watch the middle-aged cultivator leave. Lu Ping once again found the simple stone armor from the storage ring and put it on his body. Then he released Samling and Degue from the spirit beast bag. The 4 monster pets also seemed to understand that Lu Ping was going to take a risk. Even Samling was not as naughty as he used to be. He quietly followed behind Lu Ping and watched Lu Ping put a few top-grade spirit stones into the array. He stamped his foot and activated the spirit stones with a surge of qi. The teleportation array was activated. A white light flashed. Lu Ping and the 4 spirit pets had disappeared, leaving only the seaweed floating above the teleportation array, slowly falling down. Once again covering the teleportation array in the mud and weeds of the seabed. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.